Tonight on hallowed stock car racing grounds, all of the stars of the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series get to shine. But before that happens, the hopefuls who take this series on every Sunday have just one mission in mind: race to get in. Live from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway, a stock car's sacred ground, we welcome you to coverage of the KBRN Open Challenge in preparation for who gets in and who gets to compete in the 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series All-Star Race. And glad that you're with us on the KBueno Racing Network as we continue our coverage of the 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season and all of the All-Star festivities that we will have tonight here from America's home from racing and Charlotte Motor Speedway, where alongside several-time Droppin the Hammah Cup Series winner Jaden Porter, I am Kenneth Bueno, and Jaden, you'll be watching from the sidelines. You'll be watching with us here in the booth before you take on the main race, an open challenge, 40 laps, 8 drivers that move on from this event, moving on to the main later on tonight. How important will that be for these drivers to work hard to get in?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting and difficult for all these guys to get through. We're having a horsepower change for this race. iRacing added to where you can add more horsepower or whatnot. So that should maybe change the racing a little bit. So that's another factor these guys got to deal with, and it's going to be fun to watch to see how aggressive these guys get in to try to make the All-Star race, because the All-Star race is a very special race that nobody wants to miss out on.
Pretty short race in this KBRN Open Challenge. You got a lot of drivers that are rookies in this series, and the entire rule set for the All-Star race means all full-time former race winners. That includes drivers who visited Victory Lane this season and also who visited Victory Lane last season. All of those drivers who have not yet won a race, even those who are considered veterans among the scene of this group going all the way back to 2020 and the MPI Cup Series days, well, they've got to race their way in just like everyone else has to, depending on the skill level. It doesn't matter who you are. If you've got to race in, you have to do that very task. So we start tonight with the KBRN Open Challenge, 40 laps on tap. It's not a long one, Jaden, here from Charlotte, so it's a pretty short race and a pretty big field to be able to try and get in. The stages are 20 laps apiece, so the top 3 get in after the first stage is over. The top 5 at the end of this race at lap number 40 are able to move on to that All-Star main. So how do you try and strategically put yourself in the right place to be either top 3 or top 5 for either stage?
Well, for the Open to start off, I think it's qualifying for stage 1. You got to be able to qualify well, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of saving tire for only a 20-lap stint to begin. So you're going to have to qualify well to put yourself in a good position to begin with. And you're going to have to honestly fight for clean air. I think if you can get first place off the start, you should be fine with how this car is, but qualifying is going to be a very important thing for the Open, especially with only a 20-lap per stage. And
we've also been hearing from you, from Francisco, from a lot of the drivers here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. The cars are pretty tight, so dirty air is not going to be a best friend with all of that elevated power. 10% more power than you would have on a regular mile-and-a-half configuration in this next-gen car. We'll talk about those details and a bit more in just a few minutes. Let's go back in time. Let's tell you what happened at Southern California the last time we went racing in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series in the Southern California 300, 150 laps at the Virtual Auto Club Speedway. Ford's at the front of the field. Kevin Roy with a pole position, his first of the season. Justin Erb right behind him. He would go on to lead 38 of the 150 laps. Jaden, you were in this race. You had a chance to feel out this car in this very big Auto Club Speedway. What did that feel like out there on the track as we saw great battles for the lead between Roy, Erb, and a bunch of others?
Yeah, it was a very racy kind of race to begin with. It was a very cool day in Southern California, so the cars were pretty gripped up, which made them pretty fun to race around. And the car was kind of tight, but it was kind of just good all around because of the cool temperatures. So it was a lot of fun to drive, race around. I just see pit stop happening. Pit strategy ended up deciding this caution-free race. And you'll see the 88 there. He's the one that played his strategy really well. But racing around everybody with the full temperatures and everything was pretty fun last week, I'm not gonna lie.
Hey, we see the 82 as well. You're right there on that onboard shot on the front straightaway. We would see you later in this race. There's Stephen Harlow making a dive on the inside on David Duran. That was the battle for the lead. You were right there in third place. And this was really important, just getting the track position right before the pit strategy ended up opening up for you, watching this happen in front of you and trying to capture the race lead right here with Stephen Harlow on the exit of turn 4. What do you think about in going for the lead and how that helps you on the pit strategy and what ultimately unfolded in this race?
Yeah, I mean, you always, in the next gen, you always want to have the lead everywhere, including a race like this, even though it wasn't, the clean air wasn't king, but it was, you can't ever just say you don't want clean air. And I ended up playing the strategy wrong. I actually was thinking we were going to get a caution at some point, so I was all out, but you see a lot of these guys that were kind of saving throughout the race were able to make it on one last stop. You just see Stympian taking the lead from Justin there on the back stretch. But yeah, I did not play the strategy right at all. I actually was hoping for a caution. We didn't get it, and Steven Stympian looked like he played it pretty.
And he went right to the inside.
Honestly.
Yeah, right to the inside of Justin Erb, making that pass, and in a flag-to-flag affair, Steven Stympian back in Droppin the Hammah victory lane, his second victory of the season, third career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series win, parking it over in the 15th hole victory lane on the front straightaway at Auto Club Speedway. His first this season since he went on to win the Echo Park Speedway Affair, that super speedway race that happened all that while ago. And I think it's become a common trend to see not only Steven Stympian up front, but whenever he is, you, Jaden, right alongside him battling for the race lead. That Echo Park Speedway race, very much nothing different. The last time, though, we were here at the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway, it was back in Season 1. It was a trip in the playoffs where Cedric Hunter, who's already won multiple times this season in search of his first career, Droppin the Hammah Cup Series championship, getting to victory lane in wild race-ending strategic circumstances. And the caution flag is out. There's trouble in the back of the field, and it's former race leader James Kunkel. 9.6 seconds. Moreno even quicker, 7.6 seconds. And it's Hunter, Hall, Harlow through the restart zone. Maggio has control. Not as good of a jump from the 5-time winner in Lawson Peel. It keeps Justin Erb in control of second.
And here comes Cedric Hunter. And there's the block, but Hunter's going to peek to the inside. There it goes, the 45, and it should be a relatively easy pass. He clears Maggio for the lead. One, here comes Peel now, trying to move up into second. Cedric Hunter, who went winless in the regular season, shows up at the right time, and he's into the round of 12. He wins here from Charlotte.
The only thing I can really say to sum it up is it's about damn time.
What a night, what a moment for Cedric Hunter, who's so far victorious several times this season, and one that we're most likely going to see in that All-Star main race alongside you, Jaden, later on tonight. But as qualifying wraps up here in the KBueno Open Challenge, that means we're just a few minutes away from the green flag. And before we get into the starting grid, when you feel that moment, anticipation sitting right behind the wheel, you're starting to get to that point where you're on the starting grid, what do you feel before getting on those pace laps and getting to the green flag?
Sorry, my PC just crashed. I was joined back. But can you repeat your question? I'm sorry.
Just as a driver, what does that feel like in those moments leading up to the pace car going off and before that green flag comes out, especially in a race like this where you have to perform well to make it into that main show?
Yeah, I mean, you feel a lot of nerves. For me personally, every green flag before a race, I feel a little bit of nerves, especially for a high pressure one like this. I mean, you don't want to be sitting on the couch watching the All-Star race. You want to be in the All-Star race. So all these drivers right here are going to be feeling a lot of nerves, you know. But once the green flag comes out, game face has got to come on and all the nerves go out the window. So hopefully these guys aren't a little too nervous, but we'll see what happens.
Well, the helmets are on. The drivers are ready behind the wheel of their virtual race cars. Let's take you trackside and give you tonight's starting grid for the 40-lap KBueno Open Challenge. All the drivers, of course, trying to make it their best shot to get into the All-Star main later on tonight. We're on the front row to see the green flag first. It is Francisco Bacalhau, a driver who is trying to get into that main race. Of course, not a former winner in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, at least in terms of full-time participation. He won a race earlier this season, but, of course, trying to get back to victory lane and do it in an all-star capacity. He's on the front row. Charles Van Schaik, a very surprising, very dramatic season, but so far has panned out in the rookie's favor, the number 23 on the outside of row number 1. Back in row number 2, you'll find stellar rookie sensation Garrett Walden in his number 43 Chevrolet, and Matthew Perusini, his number 96 on the outside in 4th position. Back inside the top 5 is Casey Knighton in the number 28 machine inside the top 5, and Zachary Hall, defending series champion, is back in it after all. Brand new number, but of course, the same race car that brought him to the checkered flag first at Homestead of Miami. The defending champion joins us from the outside of row number 3. Back in row number 4 was the drive that led 38 laps last week at the Virtual Auto Club Speedway. It's Justin Urban, his machine, and Chuck Stevens is number 84 on the outside in 8th. Stephen Harlow rolling back from the inside of the top 9. And Ray Rogers, the first driver not to set a time in qualifying. He'll be back there in the 10th position, and that will be basically it for this KBRN Open Challenge. So it's 40 laps on tap here from Charlotte. Of course, that first stage coming at around lap 20, so it'll be at the beginning of that lap. And the top 3 that cross that line first are going to be the drivers that immediately lock into the main race, so they won't really have to participate in the rest of the affair. Top 5 in the rest of it end up moving on, and given the field number that we have right now, Jaden, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw basically all of these drivers, as far as we see it, all but one, are going to be able to move on to that main race. So when you see that go down, does it add a little more security, understanding that given your position, you are most likely going to make that main race later on tonight?
Yeah, it adds more security, but also could add more pressure. You don't want to be the one person that misses the All-Star race, so I'd feel a little more secure, especially if I was in like Francisco Spar here starting on the pole. Any of the top 5, I'd feel fine, but at the same time, all it takes is wrecking out and you miss the All-Star race.
Yeah.
I'd feel a little more secure, but at the same time, you don't want to be the one person that missed the race, so we'll see who that person is.
It's going to be that one odd man out. Lights are off from the official iRacing pace car, and we'll go green next time by for the 40 laps here at the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. Of course, Francisco, given a very interesting story, he is a former winner in this series. The same for Zachary Hall, hence why he's technically qualified to even try and make it into the race. However, that does go for drivers that make the All-Star main racing qualifying that are full-time drivers. So Zachary Hall, although he is a defending champion, he was full-time last season. He walked away with his first career win and the crown at Homestead of Miami in the final race. He has not been full-time this season. We have not seen the defending champion try to go back-to-back, hence why he is in this KBRN Open Challenge, and the same for Francisco Bacallao. He is a qualified part-time driver, won at Kentucky Speedway in dominant fashion a few weeks back, but because the fact that he is not a full-time driver, he is going to have to qualify his way in. All of the other drivers, for the most part, full-time in Season 2 and in 2026. However, of course, they are drivers that have not gone to drop in the Hammah victory lane, so a chance for them to breathe some life into their all-star lives as we get this one ready to go from Charlotte Motor Speedway. It's Francisco Bacallao, Charles Van Schaik, front row, green flag in the KBRN Open Challenge, and already trouble. Van Schaik in the outside wall will stay green. And because of the spill from Van Schaik, we will be under the yellow flag for the first time tonight in our KBRN Open Challenge. Van Schaik going sideways right as the field was getting to the green flag, Jaden. I don't know if there was a shifting mistake from the driver of the 23, but already heavy right front damage, and from first to dead last for the 23 car.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Even without the horsepower change, starting second place on the outside, for whatever reason, you've seen in other leagues here at Charlotte, has just not been good. I don't know if it's because of like the seam changes or whatnot, but second place seems to spin his tires a lot more, and that just looks like what happened to Charles. You see him going in the outside wall right there. It just looked like he spun the tires. I don't know if there was a shifting mistake or not, but yeah, he just spun the tires and the outside wall.
Here's the onboard from Schaik.
Yeah, it just looks like he spun the tires, honestly. Luckily, though, for him, caution laps don't count in the open, so he can sit here for all the pace laps, honestly, and fix his damage. We'll see some more guys come out on pit road with them, honestly, which is interesting. But yeah, he can sit here for, unlike other races, he can sit here for all 3 pace laps and fix his damage. I don't know how bad it is. His wheel is a little bit to the left looking at it, but it's just unfortunate, man. Start off the race like that on lap 1. It's an unfortunate thing, and it's not really much he could do. It's just kind of how Charlotte is when you start in second place on the outside. It's really hard to get a good start without spinning his tires, and unfortunately that's what happened to him.
And a couple more drivers on pit road as well. You mentioned Zachary Hall, Chuck Stevens, the 84 machine. They're also on pit road for presumed damage. We saw a bit of that left rear dented for the 33, the former champion of Zachary Hall, so his Category 5 Esports Toyota Camry on pit road, and of course that Charles Van Schaik machine on that right front. There's the damage, so he'll try and get that fixed and spend all of the time necessary for that. And you brought up exactly what I was going to mention. We don't have yellows that count here in the All-Star Open, nor do we have that in the All-Star Main. So if we do see crashes happen and yellow flags come out, the laps will not take down as we stay pacing. So right now, we are technically still on lap 1. If this was any other race, caution laps would count. We would be maybe on lap 2, 3. We would have a restart at lap 4. But instead, we're going to have a fresh slate, brand new race for the drivers to deal with. So it's a blank sheet of paper. Lap number 1, you'll be able to restart the race. Obviously, with Van Schaik being further back in track position and some cars that have been formerly damaged, but now we'll have another chance to come back in this race, albeit with a very different track position feel than they did when they first got up going. So we'll double them up. We'll do it all over again. You see that ticker on the top left of your screen says 40 to go. Again, the caution laps don't count, so we'll be straight up from lap number 1, and we'll be crossing the line on the restart for lap number 2 of this 40-lap KBRN Open. So Bakayao on the front row, of course, same pole position that he was in when we started this race. Garrett Walden on the outside in his Walmart Chevrolet. What a season it has been for Garrett Walden so far, a driver who has been sneakily good at many racetracks this season. His best career finish was 5th over at the Iowa Speedway, perhaps one of the hardest tracks to drive in this schedule, and also one of the hardest races to have dealt with. Tires blowing, several drivers having to short pit because those tires were going out, and they could not have made it to the checker flag without a disqualification because of a meatball flag. Walden was able to be one of those few survivors behind Cedric Hunter, the eventual race winner, ended up with a top 5 and also a top 10 at the Auto Club Speedway after starting 8th. That Walmart Chevrolet got put into 7th by the time that flag-to-flag affair had ended at lap number 150. A very good season so far for Walden. He wants a very good first start to tonight's affair and to get into that All-Star Main by any means necessary. Again, top 3 after lap number 20 are moving on. Bakayao, Walden, Perusini, back to the restart zone. Green flag on lap number 2.
Much better jump by Garrett on the outside there than the last restart. Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be able to clear Matthew. He might be able to. Matthew's going to get in behind him. So a clean start for the top 3. So far, Francisco kind of in control of clean air now.
And there goes Casey Neiden and Justin Erb, pair of teammates for the SKM group. Justin Erb with a whale of a performance last week at Auto Club Speedway. Started on the front row, led a ton of laps. And after what has been so far a pretty rocky season for this Husky Home Depot Ford Mustang Dark Horse, Justin Erb in his second full-time Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season, still trying to look for that elusive first victory, and has had plenty of speed in this brand new next-gen era, just has not completed a full race yet to be able to be at there first for the green flag. Here comes Matthew Perusini right up front in this battle for 3rd place. It could start developing back to turn 1. You saw Stephen Harlow taking a look under Casey Knight in that battle for 5th. Decided before they got to the first corner, and Stephen Harlow, who was battling for the lead several times at the Auto Club Speedway last week, ended up pushing himself into a pretty good spot. And Harlow currently inside the top 5, just trying to slowly sneak in to any sort of the positions that they can gain before lap number 20 peaks up. There's the onboard look from Stephen Harlow, and Jaden, you think of this brand new horsepower package. It's the same setup that iRacing has for these next-gen cars. the same weight distribution across this 3,400-pound stock car, but the power increased by 10. So you go from what is initially 670 horsepower to 737 horsepower. How much does that fundamentally change the aspects of driving the car in the moments you had in practice and watching these drivers in the first few?
Yeah, driving it in practice, you initially don't really, at least at the beginning of the run, I don't think you feel really too terribly much of a difference. Like you see Francisco, they're running the high line up there, which is pretty surprising early on. But I feel like later on in the run, you'll really tell with tires. I feel like tires might wear out faster than they usually do, especially the right front with how tight the setup is. So right now, I don't know if you're gonna notice much of a difference, but a guy I would watch out for maybe towards the end of this 20-lap run is Harlow, because he is really good at saving his tires, and maybe he's just gonna sneakily sneak up on his top 4 by saving his tires. As I say that, he runs to the top, so maybe he's not saving at all. Oh, he hit the wall a little bit, but yeah, I feel like later on in the run you'll really notice the difference in tires instead of how you usually do with the 650.
And you watch Harlow snag one, got around Justin Erb from the high side in his side-by-side battle with Matthew Perusini in the fight for third. So it could have been some lost time there for Stephen Harlow, but back in the motions and trying to get around that 96 to eventually make his way up to the 43 and that 30. Bacayao and Walden, 2 cars. Toyota Chevrolet currently battling for the top spot with 33 laps to go. So they're already nearing a full second and a half behind the main field, and Harlow already losing time just trying to get around this number 96 of Perusini. Not entirely in his favor right now. Harlow near to a race victory and is dropping the Hammah Cup Series career several times. But for a DTH team with drivers like Steven Stempien, who's won twice this campaign, Alex Muscarella, who has led from the pole several times this season, Stephen Harlow still looking for that proper bright spot. Big block entering turn 3 on Justin Erb. Wanted nothing to do with what that Ford Mustang wanted to approach with entering that third corner. Nearly got Harlow to the inside of Perusini. And right behind Zachary Hall, James Kunkel battle for 6 back to turn 1.
There's a big pack around this third spot. I think all these guys know how important it is just to lock themselves in already. I mean, I know only one guy might be missing, but you don't want to leave any chance of you being that person and missing. So you see how important this third position is for everybody, knowing you can lock yourselves in.
But of course, they're looking forward if they're not in the top 3 right now. If they're the top 5 by the end of this race at lap number 40, then they will approach that movement into the All-Star main race. Although they'll be at the very back of this field, it still will be a qualification into that main race. And what a battle we're watching inside this top 6. Erb defending high side on Zachary Hall, the former champion. Peeking to the inside, the New York native not able to do it. And Kevin Roy, who led from the pole last week at Auto Club Speedway. Very big moment for the driver of this number 22 machine for that SKM group. Did not make it to the checkered flag at the top spot, Jaden, but what a drive it was for Kevin Roy, a driver we don't necessarily see at the top of the board any given week, but Roy with a great performance to start at Auto Club last Sunday.
Yeah, he had a really good performance. He was very surprising in my eyes to see him just unlike he was. He was running pretty good all race. Obviously, I don't know exactly where he finished or not, so I can't say if he had to finish he wanted or deserved, but he ran really well all last week, and that's good momentum into a race like this. You know, maybe a season hasn't gone the way you want it to, but when you have a race like that where you're running up front, you see Harlow trying to pass Matthew for third right here. That's gonna give you some confidence, and that's all that's all that a race car driver needs is confidence. So maybe you'll see him show up here in his All-Star Open.
And at Auto Club Speedway, Roy, those were his first laps led all season. Led 27 on the 150 laps, and from the pole ended up in 16th. But 2 top 10s this season, so almost similar in the fashion to the Garrett Walden season that has been going on so far. Bright spots. Obviously, there are struggles along the way, but still a long season to go, and it is getting physical in the battle for the transfer spot come lap 20. There are 6 laps to go until we get that first stage break, and the top 3 move on to the main show while Harlow's giving everything he's got. Exit turn 4. Perusini's got him back to the start-finish line.
you can see how important this position is. They were door banging into turn 1. It looked like Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick from today on lap 1. But interesting note, after that contact, it looks like it bent in the right front fender of Harlow. So that's probably going to make his race car really tight, and that's going to be something to note if he doesn't make the next, because to make the top 3, he's probably going to spend time fixing that damage and lose track position. So for Harlow, this might be a really important pass that he might have to make if he wants to make it to the All-Star race.
Big question is, how does he make it work? Perusini's planted that wall defensively. How does Harlow respond? How does he alternate to get around this number 96 Chevrolet? Holding on to the midline right now, Perusini pulls away by a few tenths of a second. Mind you, they're just about 2 seconds adrift from Garrett Walden out in second. Him and Francisco Bacalhau have pulled away to the tune of a few seconds already, and it's a few seconds from Bacalhau back to everybody in the top 3 on beyond. It's a full second between Bacalhau and the second place car in Garrett Walden, so this looking like a dominant early performance for Bacalhau. And again, that mile-and-a-half shot at Kentucky Speedway, a race in which he decided to take the racetrack, dominated the field, and captured his first career drop in the Hammah Cup Series victory. That was something unbeholden. We have seen a pure dominant effort leading over 150 laps in that affair. And of course, while not a full-time runner and not driving for the championship this season in the points, Bacalhau still wanted to show that he's got the stuff to be able to win, and strutted his stuff very nicely at that Kentucky Speedway, another mile-and-a-half track. So potentially just a bit similar to this Charlotte Motor Speedway, albeit just a different package, but he has spent a ton of time practicing on the iRacing service since that update came out. And a very shallow entry into turn 1, but a driver that has been able to really plant the throttle at the exit and get the good speed. Battle for position number 6, Kevin Roy and Justin Erb battle in the back. Of course, this is not going to matter all that much with the final lap up becoming before this stage 1 break comes on, and Zachary Hall is starting to format a charge on the top 2, but will he have enough time? Francisco Bacalhau sailing off the final 2 corners, coming across the line, and Bacalhau certifying himself into the All-Star main race, crossing the line at lap 20. Garrett Walden sure to come home in second, and this battle for third continues. Perusini, Harlow, and now Zachary Hall back to turn 1.
Yeah, if Zachary Hall wants a chance, he might have to pass Harlow. As Harlow gets underneath Matthew. Matthew's wall. Oh, they're wrecking down the backstretch.
And that's the caution that's coming out. So Harlow to the inside wall, a hard hit, and Perusini technically had gone through. Zachary Hall is going to take over third at the yellow. And now we'll have to figure this out on who got through first.
Yeah, that was definitely a very interesting way for them to throw the caution. I don't know how they're going to rule this. Either way, if one of them makes it in, either Matthew or Harlow, they have a lot of work they're going to have to do if they did not make it in to this next extent to make it into the next one. They both got a lot of damage from that. So, especially Harlow. So I don't know how they're going to rule this.
So remember, we were looking at potential start or end of lap number 20 to be able to consider this the transfer position. But man, what a situation that was between Perusini and Stephen Harlow. Second look as they were coming into turns 1 and 2 again. Final shot. Stephen Harlow giving it everything he's got to the inside of the racetrack. Perusini holds on from the top shelf. Got the wall, came right down into Harlow, and those two hitting on the back straightaway, nearly getting into Zachary Hall. And in all of that, the battle for third had continued all the way through. Bacalhau, Walden, and Perusini will stay out. So this will potentially certify the top 3 in this group you're watching right now that moves on to the main show later on tonight.
I don't know if that was the end of the stint or not. I don't know what exactly is going on here. I know Matthew has a lot of damage there, so he's hoping that's the end of the stint. But yeah, that's a crazy finish to the end of the stage 1 in this open. That just sets the tone for the whole night, to be honest. And that just shows how important that spot was. You don't want to have to depend on if there's another stint. Hey, if I might miss it, I don't make it through here, I might miss it. So hopefully Harlow's not too badly damaged to be able to still compete.
And again, those caution laps do not count, so we'll see if Harlow's going to be able to get back on the racetrack and do whatever he can. So we are getting confirmation based on the race control decisions. Bakayao, the winner of stage number 1 here at Charlotte Motor Speedway in this KBRN Challenge. So he will move on to the next round. The All-Star main, Garrett Walden, is considered in from second, and Matthew Perosini is going to be the final driver in. So all that physicality with Stephen Harlow, it means the 6 car is going to have to fight another day, and Perosini will celebrate his shot at getting into the All-Star main later on tonight. Lots of work to do for the cash prize at the end of 100 laps in 3 distinct segments. We'll tell you all about that later on in the show. But that means top 5 at the end of lap number 40. Well, that means they will end up going to be the next drivers that are in to the main show. So it's Zachary Hall at the head of this field, with Justin Erb on the outside of row number 1, Kevin Roy and Casey Knighton, pair of Ford Mustang dark horses in row number 2. Plenty of other drivers that are still trying to get back on the racing surface. That does include, of course, Charles Van Schaik, who had early race damage on lap number 1, Chuck Stevens, who was on pit road, and Stephen Harlow, who of course got that late race damage in the end of the stage after the contact with Perosini at the exit of turn 2. That car still on pit road, although the lights are off from the iRacing official pace car. So it's a 4-car show as we see it in this KBRN Open. There will be 20 laps to go. And of course, similar rules as the initial stage. Just run it all the way to the 40-lap mark. 20 more laps to go. And then whoever is the top 5 at the end of this one will be considered moving on to the main race. That is Hall, Erb, Knighton, Roy, and James Kunkel. See that 5th car, that Mobil 1 Ford Mustang, similar to Casey Knighton. Van Schaik, Stevens, and Harlow sure to join the rest of this field as they come off of turn 4. They'll see the Echo Park Automotive Restart Zone, and it is the defending series champion, Zachary Hall, trying to get back into winning ways. And it looks like we'll do it all over again. So pace car will come out. They'll wait for Stephen Harlow to recuperate with the field, and we'll take one more trip around this Charlotte Motor Speedway. We'll do a little bit of a scenic tour with Zachary Hall at the front of this field. So while we have this time, why don't we bring in the winner of Stage 1 in this KBRN Open Challenge, and we're joined by our good friend Francisco Bakayao. Francisco, that looked like a very easy race for you. You saw the drama on the outside of the front row. Caution came out. You led all the way through. What did that car feel like in that opening run?
The car handled great. It was clean air that was very helpful. Being able to start in the front row, get away, and just trying to see what it would do in different lanes, what it would do on the bottom, what it would do in the top. Trying to see what the 43 was doing, seeing how I could defend that, trying to take some notes that I can maybe use later on in the main race in a few minutes later. I know I'll have to start towards the back end of that field. Luckily, the field isn't too big, so it's not like starting 30th, but now I'm going to have to try and prepare how I run with the dirty air. But I think it's going to be just as interesting to see who the 5 final drivers are that make it into this show are going to be and how they get there.
And it's so fun to see Zachary Hall back in action. I mean, we had probably slivers of information from our good friend Cedric Hunter, teammates and good friends with Zachary Hall, that Zachary has still been involved in Cedric's runs here on Sunday nights in the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series. His most recent win at Texas was alluded to Zachary Hall, his strategy call that helped Cedric get to the front at the end of that race and go on to win it. Zachary's here now behind the wheel once again, and he will take the field back to green. Final stage in the KBRN Open Challenge. Battle for second. Roy and Erb in turn 1.
Another clean start for second place there. Actually, looking at back here, looks like Harlow's still in the race.
Oh, wrecking in the back. It's the 84.
Chuck Stevens in trouble. Yellow flag out again. And it's a solo car spill. Charles Stevens in his number 84 Chevrolet going to bring out the next yellow as we approach halfway.
That might have been contact with Harlow as I was talking about him, but they were really tight off turn 2, I saw.
So here's the second look. Charles on the outside. Yep, just contact from Harlow. And around Stevens went. Great job to avoid the inside wall. Just popped on the brakes. Car went to a dead halt. and just skidded down that main straightaway in between the apron and the racing transition line. So not too much harm for this 84 car. Second look as they come off of turn 4. That's a single file restart, by the way, at the back of this field. All of those drivers had spent a plethora of time getting their cars repaired on pit road just to rejoin this field. And Francisco, it's that same condition that Jaden and you were talking about in the moments leading up to this show. A very tight condition off turn 2 with that extra power.
Yeah, that's just the way the track has been. Early on in practice, it didn't exactly feel that way. But as the session went on, as the truck rubbered in, it just kept getting tighter and tighter. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind, that if you're not on that double white and blue painted line on the bottom, the car will have a tendency to push up. And with that extra horsepower, Jane, you got to remember, it will accelerate more. So you're actually carrying more speed through the exit, and you have to kind of compensate for that than what you were probably normally used to. Carrying more speed, it's going to want to go to the wall quicker.
Yeah, not only that, he also had a bunch of damage on his race car, which is obviously going to make the race car even more tighter. So add on the extra horsepower and everything off turn 2 with the track being tighter, add on his whole front of this car looks to be destroyed still.
So we'll see whether Stevens is able to get back on the racetrack again, searching for that top 5 position currently held by James Kunkel. And as we see it, it is practically all SKM from second back to 5th. You think of Zachary Hall, a driver who was on that Category 5 esports team with Cedric Hunter last season. Only Toyota left in the field, by the way. Francisco was the other Toyota that already moved on to the main race. But now, all Ford Mustang Dark Horses, all on the same team. These are drivers that have been friends, drivers for many years, from the days of the MPI Cup Series, moving into the Sunoco Cup era, and now into this revitalized Droppin the Hammah Cup Series. And these are all drivers, Francisco, that at any given moment can be very strong. We have seen all of these cars for at least one moment this season be up at the front of this field competing for wins. Justin Erb competing for the lead at Texas Motor Speedway, one of our last 1.5 mile races of the season before tonight's All-Star Affair. Of course, we mentioned that Auto Club Speedway race where it was just him and Kevin Roy at the front of this field. Casey Knighton has spent some time on super speedway races and others at the head of the field. And James Kunkel, think back to Echo Park Speedway, one of those few drivers making the outside work. It's possible that we could see any one of these drivers put the torch up to Zachary Hall as we get the 1 and green signal.
Also, I wonder how much damage Harlow's going to be able to get fixed here. He didn't really get, I don't really think he got anything from that contact with the 84. Looks, I mean, his left front looks a lot better from that angle. I don't know about his right front. Right front's real. Car looks pretty brand new.
Yeah, clean race car.
Honestly. Yeah. So that's another name we might add into maybe going toe-to-toe with Zachary Hall here. Harlow has a fresh car now, it looks like, so maybe he'll be able to charge through the field here.
But now, he's got that extra challenge of weaving through at least 5 other cars to be able to get through the checkered flag first. But of course, need to be in that top 5. You don't necessarily need to push too hard. Stephen Harlow wanted his ticket to the All-Star Main being booked a lot earlier, lap number 20. That's why you saw that extra physicality with Matthew Perricini, but with a fast race car and a driver that now has a clean vehicle to work with. He'll be back on the outside of row number 3. That is P6. Stevens and Van Schuyck will rejoin the field at the exit of turn 4. So we'll do this restart all over again at the exact 20 to go marker here in this KBRN Open Challenge. Again, top 5 moving on to the main. Zachary Hall with a wonderful restart. Coming back to turn 1, battle for second, non-existent. Justin Erm has the spot, and Kevin Roy, Casey Knighton do battle for third in turn 1.
You can see right there, they're going side by side for that position, and a little bit of a bad run for the 28 off of turn number 2. He gives up a few positions, putting the 5th place car now as the Stephen Harlow 6th machine. There's the 84 of Chuck Stevens that has worked his way up into 6th, so there could be a 3 or 4 way fight here for that final position over the next 18 laps.
And that 3-car train on the inside of the racetrack, all gaining spots with Casey Knighton dropping back a few. Here comes Harlow, peek to the inside on James Kunkel, washed up out of the exit of turn 2. Harlow makes the move, darts underneath, fires this time for 4th. Again, that's the transfer spot that he got around Casey Knight in 4. Chuck Stevens is the first driver out. Harlow will be the first driver through to the main race, so he needs this pass. He's still even with Kunkel down the main straightaway. Back to turn 1. Kunkel fades in and out of existence. He's on the high side to play defense, and Harlow again back to the inside. Just cannot complete the pass. James Kunkel's got the position off the corner.
It'd be very interesting to see if this final transfer spot comes down to the 6 and 84. They just had contact off turn 2. So I don't know if the 84 would be shy about using the bumper tube. I don't know if any of these guys would be shy about using the bumper for this transfer spot. But you see Harlow, he's working really hard to try to get past James on the bottom here.
I mean, the biggest thing here is that we're racing for a spot in the All-Star race. This isn't even the main. You see contact between the 6 and the 12 there. Checks them up. There's Casey Knight now with a run at it again. With no points at it, Jaden Kenneth, I think that we're going to see these drivers just give that little bit more. There's really nothing to lose.
But again, you look at Stephen Harlow, and that move on the back straightaway had to send the door to Chuck Stevens. That was a block on the straightaway. That is the transfer spot. So you ask yourself, if you're Stephen Harlow, you understand the pace that you can carry. And we know the raw pace that Stephen Harlow has every week in main points competition. You see him trying to get around James Kunkel. How aggressive do you really want to be, Jaden? Because in the moments that Harlow has been able to get to the inside and not complete the pass, he is losing space and speed to Stevens and Casey Knight in behind. Although they're losing touch now, Harlow's failed attempts have brought them closer. So how do you balance that aggression on being like, all right, I want to make this spot. However, if I get too aggressive and I don't make the pass, here comes the transfer spot. I could be out of the main race.
I feel like, unfortunately, he's just in a position where he has to keep going for it. You don't want to be that last guy with 6th place bearing down on you for a chance into turn 3 and 4 to make the All-Star race. You want to be set in top 4, kind of away from being in that danger zone. And you see Harlow's able to make the pass here, so now he's not in that danger zone. But you don't want to be that last guy in, because you never know what could happen. Caution could change everything, and you can give him a punching bag for that last spot. So you don't want to be the punching bag for that last spot.
So finally, Stephen Harlow makes that position and ends up into the top 4. So he'll have a chance to make up some more ground on Kevin Roy. That distance at about 8 car lengths and 0.8 of a second. Back to the 22 machine who holds on to that spot. Justin Erb about half a second behind the race leader of Zachary Hall. But again, all 5 of the drivers at the front will be able to move on at the checkered flag of this KBRN Open. So if you are 2nd, 3rd, and maybe if Erb doesn't think he can make an effort at Zachary Hall for the race victory, ultimately won't necessarily be a storyline to really have too much pressure on, because he will make the show just like Zachary Hall will. It's just about track position when, of course, that All-Star main kicks off
This battle's
later on
heating up
tonight.
right now, Kenneth. We got the 2 side by side for that final spot. The 84 had a good run off of turn 4, and there they go into turn 1 for the position.
Chuck Stevens, red, white, and blue Chevrolet on the inside. And that red, white, and black Mobil 1 Ford Mustang, he's got some teammate help on the back straightaway, so that could very well play a factor. Outside goes Kunkel, playing the defensive role. Chuck Stevens in the Harlow. Offensive role to the inside. Chuck Stevens on a masterful move at the exit of turn 4. Stevens has the transfer spot. 10 laps to go.
It'd be very interesting to see how this teammate game plays if they were 5th and 6th. I don't know how nice they would be to each other, but it looks like Chuck Stevens just going to drive away from both of them. Nice move by Chuck Stevens to get to 5th place there.
And now here comes Knighton. Look on the bottom of the racetrack. And that'll be for 6th place. But again, no dice if they cannot crack into the top 5. 10 laps to go here from Charlotte Motor Speedway in this KBRN Open Challenge. And this race in control firmly by Zachary Hall. Justin Erb just trailing behind 2nd. Kevin Roy 3rd. Stephen Harlow 4th. And Stevens ending up inside this top 5. Remember, there are chances for strategy in this race. And while Chuck Stevens had to spend 1 minute and 10 seconds on pit road for his call before eventually coming out, fixing the race car, you know, there isn't necessarily the call about tires and fuel. This is a very short race, so you don't necessarily think about that all too much. But when you think about pit stops, you also think about lost track position, how Chuck Stevens had to fight even with the minimal car count. And what a great job it was for that 84 to move on. Now Knighton and Kunkel going to do battle for 6th place, coming to 7 laps left.
Yeah, I mean, with how tight this setup is and how kind of cool the temperatures are, any spot, even if it's just one spot, is very important track position-wise. So the fact Chuck Stevens even was able to get back up to 5th is very impressive. And I mean, I know they wrecked lap 1, I think, to begin this stage. You can still add a little feel to the race car, and it still change how it drives the slightest bit. And it's only being 20 laps, the slightest bit can change a lot. You see Harlow is still trying to make some moves on Kevin Roy here on his way to the front. So nice recovery by Harlow to make it into the top 5.
Casey Neiden also coming back as well, hoping for some kind of equalizing yellow to put himself back in contention for the action. The driver out of Madison, Alabama, who's been racing on sims since 2011, up until the iRacing days of now, where he's trying to make it into this All-Star main race. A lot of work he needs to complete. Meanwhile, the Newport, North Carolina native of Zachary Hall has commanded this field since the end of stage number 1, and he has not let go of the handrails so far. Justin Erb behind by 0.7 of a second. And Kevin Roy may have one more fight on his hands before this is all said and done. Here comes the Vermont driver, Stephen Harlow, to the back bumper.
And let's see, he's put on a great recovery drive once he got past the 12 machine not too long ago. He's going to get into the wall, but look how he's able to still carry that momentum. He's going to see if he goes to the outside. Roy will protect the inside, so side by side for 4th. And what you don't want to do right now with 4 to go, Kenneth, is racing for a spot where you're in no matter what, and possibly cost yourself a chance at the win. So with the spot on the outside, we'll see that 6 try to drive his way through, get clear, and now try to put some distance between himself and Roy. You see Roy kind of back out on the back straightaway. He also doesn't want to get involved in an incident here. When you're coming to 3 laps to go and you have about 2 seconds on the driver you need to finish ahead of to be confirmed into the main race, I think you're just going to take it easy. I think everybody, with the way they're spread out, there's nothing that could really change here drastically.
It's that fundamental idea of, why am I going to fight you so hard when we're in the top 5, we're locked in. And for the case of Kevin Roy, the longer he fights with Stephen Harlow, the closer that Chuck Stevens gets in the fight for top 5, and the worse it could be for Roy if he ends up pushing the issue. He stabilizes so far in the top 4, and with 3 laps to go, it is all Zachary Hall's race to lose. As the end of the race will continue on, top 5 will move on in the main race, and of course all of them starting at the back of that main show. So stay with us on the KBueno Racing Network. We'll have so much for you in that all-star race. We'll describe the rules, we'll describe what happens, and of course the different segments that we'll have tonight and everything that goes into making an all-star champion in the 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season. Bit of a break here to have some fun before we go racing here for points at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Not testing the new package anymore. We'll be back to our 670 horsepower package, although I'm sure with the experimentation the drivers are seeing tonight, maybe they want the elevated power for the rest of the campaign. They'll maybe advocate for that, but Zachary Hall, so far using the second stage to his advantage, comes into 3 and 4 for the final time, and in a dominant second half, Zachary Hall comes off the final corner, and he will move on first to the main race. Winner of the KBRN Open Challenge in Stage 2, Justin Erb, Stephen Harlow, Kevin Roy, and the 84 of Charles Stevens, moving on to the main show later tonight.
How about that? The champ comes back. He has raced his way into the All-Star. So has everybody else in this top 5 of Justin Erb, Stephen Harlow, Kevin Roy, Charles Stevens. You got to feel for Casey Knighton, James Kunkel, and Charles Van Schaik. They put on some great efforts here, but just wasn't quite enough to make it to the mid show.
They fell back at the end, and unfortunately they will watch this All-Star main from the sidelines. It is Zachary Hall, the former series champion, taking the win at the end, winner of stage number 2. Justin Erb behind him, Stephen Harlow 3rd, Kevin Roy back in 4th, and Charles Stevens wrapping up the top 5. Those 5 drivers moving on to the main race, so we'll see them in just a few moments. Casey Knighton, the first driver out, with James Kunkel behind him in 7th. Charles Van Schaik, the final driver out, and Francisco Bacalhau, Garrett Walden, and Matthew Perosini, the final few drivers that make it in to the main show after winning stage number 1. And they are, of course, in on a 1-2-3 effort after lap number 20. So it's Zachary Hall that moves on, and a few others that will join him. 8 drivers move forward. The All-Star main not too far away. Be sure to stick with us on the KBueno Racing Network. When we come back, more coverage of the 2026 Droppin the Hammah All-Star Race right here. Stay with us.
Let's go racing!
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
There's only one fuel that can drive the performance you demand from your car. New 94 Octane, the highest octane on the market, only at Sunoco.
Let's go. What's up? What's up, Kenneth? How's it going, man? How are you? Good. How you been? What you got in the bag, man?
I got a panini, I have a hoagie, I got it all through the Wall Rewards app.
You can order it all through the app?
You can order it all through the app.
I can order it all through the app. The world is my oyster! By placing your order on the Wawa app, you can pick up at any time with ultimate satisfaction. Gotta have a Wawa.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
These Pop-Tarts are tasty.
Maybe Pop-Tarts do belong on the tailgate table.
Pop-Tarts, a lineup you can eat.
There's only one fuel that can drive the performance you demand from your car. New 94 Octane, the highest octane on the market, only at Sunoco.
Welcome back to the All-Star Race for the 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season as we continue our coverage live on the KBueno Racing Network. Glad to have you with us, Kenneth Bueno, alongside two drivers that will take the green flag in the main race not too long from now. Our good friends Francisco Bacallao, one-time winner this season, and multi-time winner in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, Jaden Porter. I'm going to get one quick thought for you guys before we kick things off. You both are in. Francisco, you had to race your way in through the Open. Jaden, you were already qualified as a full-time driver with a win already this season. So, Francisco, I'll start with you. Now that you've qualified in, what's the mindset going to be like? Trying to race for the cash and race for the All-Star dub?
Well, it's going to be an aggressive night, that's for sure. Everyone's going to try to be intense to try and take the track position, do whatever kind of strategy they can to get themselves in the best position possible, especially knowing that going into that last stage, the bottom couple drivers are removed from the race, and it's going to be a top 10 shootout for the final 15 laps of this race. So we're going to try to stay out of trouble and try to have some fun.
You guys have been awesome so far because not only are you broadcasters, but you're drivers. Jaden, I know you drive more than you broadcast, but you've joined us for a few shows now on the KBueno Racing Network, and I'm glad that you've got that experience to be with us for some races. Now you've got to take the headset off. You've got to put the helmet on, the virtual helmet on, and drive behind the wheel in this All-Star main. What do you think is going to happen with the 3 segments and the different kind of format we have tonight?
Yeah, I'm very intrigued about how this first segment's going to go because it's honestly going to probably set the tone for track position the rest of the race, in my opinion. So this first segment is very important, I would say. Might set the tone for who's going to win the race. I'm expecting a really wild race. Like the way the format's set up, it's set up for no need to save tire, no need to save nothing. You just send it for 100 laps and try to win $25.
So here is the format. All right, Jaden, my bad. Just cut you off there.
You're good. I was going to say anyone would like to win free money. So it should be very fun tonight, I think.
Trying to win back that entry fee. The drivers have paid money to be in this series each and every week. I think it might be fun to maybe gather some of that money back and try to get a reward after all this is said and done. So this is a look at the format for the All-Star race. Of course, we just scratched off our KBueno Open Challenge, the 40 laps. Stage number 1, we had our top 3 moving on. Stage number 2, at the end of that race, we had the top 5 at that segment also move on. Caution laps did not count then. They will not count in the main race later on that you'll see tonight, so it'll be the same format. If we do get some crashes out there on the speedway, drivers will have a finite amount of time to repair their cars, but they won't go multiple laps down on timing and scoring because those laps do not count on the racetrack. So with the eligibility that goes on, all the drivers that just qualified from the Open are joining all of the previous series winners that are locked into the 2026 All-Star race. That, of course, includes drivers that are full-time. So the reason why you saw Zachary Hall and Francisco Bacallao running from the Open into the main, they were former winners. However, they are not full-time drivers anymore, so they did have to run their way in. Everyone else is full-time that have gotten to victory lane this season. Therefore, they are officially locked in. We spread out this race over 100 laps and 3 different segments. We start the first segment with 50 on the board. So from lap 1 to lap 50, drivers have a mandatory green flag stop. There's no mandatory tire change, so the drivers don't need to put on new Goodyear Eagles if they don't want to. However, they will have to make at least 1 pit stop in between that stage. Whatever lap they decide to do it is the lap they decide to do it. We'll have a mandatory break at the end of segment 1. And then in segment 2, we'll go racing for 35 laps. After the 35 are done, the top 10 at the end of segment number 2 will end up competing for the All-Star win. So that means everybody 11th on back at the end of lap 85. They are gone. They'll watch this race at home, and everyone else will race for the All-Star win. So that'll be a lot of fun to see what happens then, how the drivers pay to that. And of course, like Jaden said, it's not too much of a worry about tires wearing down here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, although we do have 110% power, 737 horsepower behind the engines of these NASCAR Cup Series cars, Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota. So just a few moments before we get All-Star Racing here from this virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway, let's take you back in time, though, to a KBRN moment in time. And while this race was all about points and playoff hopefuls, the All-Star race very different. But in the 2020 iRacing Bungeon Lawn Care Series season, the best of the best in the drivers took over the Darlington Raceway for a hefty and very difficult race, much like we'll see tonight. Welcome to a KBRN Moment in Time. For this moment, it's the iRacing Bundren Lawn Care Series and their retro trip to Darlington in 2020. Coming off of turn number 4, pace truck is off. We are green on the Retro Racing broadcast. We're happy to have you join us. We are green from Darlington. Although the KBueno Racing Network was just a few months old at the time of this broadcast, this retro race from the iRacing Bundren Lawn Care Series at Darlington was the first proper try at a throwback broadcast feel. Apart from that, this race played a pivotal role in the 10 drivers that would make the iRacing Bundren Lawn Care Series playoffs, as this was the penultimate race of the regular season. And Darlington lived up to its name. Its high intensity, different lines of use, tire wear, and contact, of course, would take place. One playoff hopeful in this race, Nick Miller, had won the previous event at the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway, but had a rough going at the track too tough to tame, getting involved in several incidents and dropping back through the pack. While this point of the season focused heavily on the drivers trying to make the top 10 and the playoffs, Darlington was all about Hunter Johnson, taking control from the pole sitting position and dominating this entire race to capture his first career win in his first start. As more of these KBueno Racing Network broadcasts continue through the years, the throwback feel will feel a little more retro, but this, the first installment of it all. And that's today's KBRN Moment in Time. Great moment in time there from the Lady in Black, track too tough to tame, Darlington Raceway. Plenty of drivers that are either in the eNASCAR scene, college, Coke qualifying, whatever you name it. A lot of those were in that iRacing Bundren Lawn Care Series back in those days, and a crazy race from that Darlington Raceway with Hunter Johnson dominating until the end. From an intermediate track to another, Darlington in the moment in time to Charlotte Motor Speedway that we will see tonight, Francisco. This track opened back in 1960. It's a 1.5 mile configuration. It's in America's home for racing. It is in NASCAR's backyard. It is the perennial 1.5 mile track, the pinnacle of quad oval 1.5 mile racing that you'll see out there.
And I've had the pleasure of going to this racetrack to watch the Coke 600 back in 2023, a doubleheader on Memorial Day with the NASCAR Xfinity Series and Cup Series racing on the same exact day. Yeah, I know you've been here. We went to the Roval race last fall, so I'm sure it was very fun to visit this racetrack. Here's an onboard look of what the oval looks like, which is what we're running here this evening and next week. As we start the lap here, we're going to have to see drivers run different lines here tonight. For the most part, this is what I put together, a really good run on the outside of the racetrack to build that momentum for the back straightaway. You might see some other drivers try to run the bottom on this end of the racetrack coming up, and you definitely want to be on the bottom for 3 and 4. I demonstrated the high side just so you can get a really good taste of what the top end is here, but generally speaking, as long as you keep the momentum wound up and you do a good job of it, then you should complete a decent lap here. Though you got to be careful running that outside too much and too frequently. You could either burn off the right front or the right rear, and having a loose race car with this next gen, it sometimes, at least with the way it currently is, can be a little bit problematic.
Well, we'll see how that all goes down. Of course, we've been used to the old setup, 670 horsepower. We bumped that up to 737. Same setup, no weight changes in the race car either. So in this all-star race, playing around with the setups, and that has been a true tradition for this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, and even going all the way back to the MPI Cup Series, Sunoco Cup days. In the all-star race, it was always a hotbed for experimentation, whether it be changing cars, changing tracks, changing the setups of the car. Remember back in 2020, 2021, when it was the Simax Cup Series back in the day, experimenting with weight changes on the Gen 6 Cup car, back with the 550 horsepower package. Even last season in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, we didn't cover the All-Star race, but it was MX-5s at Martinsville. It was a wild combo, but we had a ton of fun. Drivers ended up racing. They enjoyed their time. We had a race winner at the end of that. And of course, it didn't count for points. It was all just for the prize money and for a lot of fun. Much like this race will be here later on tonight. However, Jaden, as we interview you, so we're going to change from broadcaster to driver mindset here. You've been one of the most successful drivers of the season, top 5 in points. You're gunning for the championship this year. And after what's been a successful campaign so far, there's a points race at Charlotte next Sunday. So with this all-star race tonight, is it any sort of preparation for that points-paying race not too long from now?
Somewhat. Obviously, we don't know what the horsepower change is, if it's going to carry on to next week or the rest of the season. So that's something you got to keep in mind. But obviously, I would kind of use it as a test for next week. I mean, next week is the race you really want to win, but you also really want to win this race. You want to win both races, honestly, in my opinion. I'm kind of selfish, like winning every race that I can. But yeah, I mean, you kind of got to use it as a test for next week. But yeah, hopefully we can win both races.
Top 10s in all but 1.5 mile race in the points paying segment. Of course, you won that Las Vegas Motor Speedway race back in early March. So is there anything you can take away from maybe the practice laps and maybe even those other 1.5 mile races fundamentally behind the wheel that could help you, even though there is a different package tonight?
I mean, kind of realizing like what are some drivers' strengths and some drivers like not strengths, I would say, is kind of what I can take away. I kind of know where I stand by. I don't know if the format tonight fits how I've been on mile and a half or how I drive. But for like next week, I feel like next week would be a lot better of a chance for me with, you know, it being a 300 lap race and not short runs. But I feel like I stand a good chance tonight. We obviously got to qualify really well. I think that's going to be very important. And we got to hit that first stint right. We don't want to make any mistakes on pit road with that green flag pit stop. So that first 50 laps, I feel like, is really important for me. And I feel like it's really important for everybody to set the tone for tonight.
All right, Jaden. Well, we know you and Francisco have some time now to qualify your way in. Francisco racing in from the open, you qualifying automatically into the main race. So, Jaden, we'll talk to you later. We'll hopefully be able to talk to you at the end of the night.
All right, thank you, buddy.
So Jaden Porter joining us for the broadcast booth, Francisco Bacalhau as well. Those two will take out of the broadcast booth. They'll be hopping into their virtual race cars, and they will be racing in this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series All-Star main race. You do not want to miss it. After a short break, we'll be All-Star Racing from Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the KBueno Racing Network.
Welcome to the Thousand Islands Cruette in Clayton, New York. We're open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Come in for a tasting and our helpful and knowledgeable staff will help you find the perfect olive oils or vinegars to add that perfect touch to your next meal. We have monthly specials and sales as well as new pairings and recipes, so there's always something new to try when you visit. The Thousand Islands Cruette on James Street in Clayton. And don't forget, hey, no touchy the tankies.
It's good.
It's good, man. How'd you get it?
I got it all through the Wawa Rewards app.
All through the app?
All through the app.
All through the app. The world is my oyster. On the Wawa app, you can get all of your favorites and pick up at any time. Gotta have a Wawa.
There's only one fuel that can drive the performance you demand from your car. New 94 Octane, the highest octane on the market, only at Sunoco.
So after 8 drivers got their automatic bid from racing their way through in the KBRN Open Challenge, welcome to the main event of the night, the 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series All-Star Race from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. On a beautiful night in Sim and on a beautiful day on Sunday, it is great to be racing after some NASCAR Cup Series action from Kansas Speedway. And of course tonight we crown a All-Star winner for the first time and only time in this 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season. Welcome into our coverage on the KBueno Racing Network. I'm Kenneth Bueno, bringing you all of the storylines before we drop into this race tonight. We've had our drivers race their way in if they weren't already qualified, and now it's all about this final All-Star race for all the marbles, the cash prize that's on the line in a 100-lap, 3-segment finale All-Star main. We'll start segment 1 on a 50-lap dash where all of our drivers tonight will have to hit pit road at least one time. So that means whether it is for tires, whether it's for fuel, or whether it's just to have a tear-off from the windshield on the racetrack, you have to come down pit road at least once in that main segment, whether it go green all the way or not. Caution laps do not count in any one of these segments in the All-Star race. So if a caution does come out on the racetrack via any spins or any other situation that happens, it doesn't matter. The drivers will not have laps count under pacing from the iRacing official pace car. And that does help a lot of drivers with damage. We saw that in the All-Star Open. Stephen Harlow able to advance in the top 5 at the end of lap number 40 in that Open Challenge, because all of those caution periods that did not have laps go by in them, he could spend as much time repairing that car on pit road, and he got back to a pretty good finish at the end of it. From there, it's 35 laps in segment 2, pretty short segment, no pit stop mandatory there. But at the end of lap number 85, so once that 35 segment 2 lap is over, that means the top 10 will move on. 11th on back will be eliminated. They will be disqualified from the race. And the top 10 will have a 15-lap shootout to decide the All-Star Race winner. So it's a pretty fun format. We've seen this happen in NASCAR Cup Series action before. However, not entirely in the tune of pure elimination on the racetrack. We'll see who does get eliminated and the drivers that officially move on and try and go at it for the 15-lap final dash for the checkered flag and the cash prize. So let's take you trackside, bringing you tonight's starting grid for the All-Star Race of the 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season. We're on the front row. It is a former winner in the season. Brandon Banks, the winner from Daytona earlier in the campaign, will share the front row with also a race winner this season in 2026. Jaden Porter winning one of our final mile-and-a-half races that we saw before the All-Star Race. That was race number 2 at Las Vegas. Those two will be the first to see the green flag. Jesse Whittington on a return to the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series. He'll start tonight from 3rd, with Warren Kyle Keith still searching for his first points-paying win. Tonight, his moment to shine, to look for the All-Star money and the All-Star win at the end. He'll be on the outside of row number 2. Back in row number 3, you'll find the 32 machine for the SKM Racing Group of Richard Swavely and Justin Erb, one of those drivers who qualified in from the All-Star Open race, was top 5 at the end of that 40-lap stint. He qualifies inside the top 6. Cedric Hunter, a 2-time winner this season, most recently won at the Texas Motor Speedway. He'll be searching for another mile-and-a-half shot, and he's a former winner here at Charlotte as well. The 45 starts inside the top 7, and Stephen Harlow found his way to rally back from early race damage at the end of Stage 1 in the KBRN Open Challenge we saw earlier tonight. The Vermont native will be on the outside in row number 8. That's back in row number 4. And then in row 5, to cap off this top 10, Alex Muscarella, strong all year long, still searching for the first win, and the first of many of those qualifiers who did not put a time in that Q session. Francisco Bacall, the Florida native, just joining us earlier on in the show, the winner of stage number 1 in that KBRN Open Challenge via the qualifying effort. Ray Rogers back in 11th. Zachary Hall taking the second stage win in the Open Challenge earlier on tonight, so giving him the bid into this main race, as well as Garrett Walden, top 3 in the first stage of the Open. Brad Fulham ends up moving on through in his number 19 machine, with Chuck Stevens barely getting in top 5 in the KBRN Open Challenge earlier tonight. Kevin Roy and Matthew Perosini will be the ending grid once we get the green flag here tonight from Charlotte. So as we talked about, our 100-lap, 3-segment race, it'll be 50 laps for this first segment. Again, a mandatory pit stop needed from the drivers in order to qualify for that second 35-lap segment. So if you do not take a pit stop, you will be punished by the race control admins, and you will furthermore not be able to move on into that next stage that moves on into lap number 85. A beautiful night to go racing here in Concord, North Carolina. 67 degrees. Very cool track temperature, although these cars will be red hot on the rear tires. 737 horsepower. That's beneath these V8 engines of the Chevrolets, Fords, and Toyotas. The Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series admin team, getting into deliberation in the weeks leading up to this All-Star race, saw that update that you could bump up the power in any given car in any given session. And so they decided, why not have the test bed for this brand new 737 horsepower package. It will not be mandated for the rest of the regular season, so we'll be back to 670 horsepower on all tracks greater than a mile and a half. But for tonight, just using that elevated power to have a bit more fun. Same changes as we'll most likely see in the following seasons if the rewards for the drivers are outweighing the cons of higher power. We've seen a lot of drivers talk about understeering conditions, particularly at the exit of this corner here, turn 2. Usually it is a pretty tight spot on the normal power package of these next-gen cars. When you run up high, lots of throttle there off of turn 2. You can easily hit the outside wall. Problem seems to be exacerbated in this new package of the next-gen car. So the drivers very aware of that in practice, in qualifying, trying to stay off of that barrier to have their laps count. And most importantly, those drivers in the KBRN Open Challenge getting those 40 laps to experiment with the new changes in a race setting. And with the dirty air that we've seen affect these cars over the course of the real points-paying campaign, all question marks to be answered here in this 100-lap all-star race. We're glad that you're joining us on the KBueno Racing Network. And it is 2 former Droppin the Hammah Cup Series winners that will share the front row, Brandon Banks and Jaden Porter, with Jesse Whittington and Warren Kyle Keith, with Richard Swabley back in the top 5. So we'll get another lap here behind the iRacing official pace car. And we'll hopefully be going green soon here in this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series all-star race. And the cash prize tonight, $25. So the 25 hard-earned bucks going to be won by the drivers in that final 15 lap stint. That should be a ton of fun. Only 10 drivers on the track, all of them gunning for the same prize. And it will be an all-out dash with everybody 11th on back having to just watch from the pit lane as they take part in tonight's race. And for Jaden, gave us great insight during that KBRN Open Challenge alongside our good friend Francisco Bacalhau. Both of them will be racing tonight. And Porter very successful in his sophomore campaign of the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series. Raced part-time in his first season last year and ended up winning in his first start at the virtual Dover Motor Speedway. Went on to finish well in his next few races. And this year going full-time. One of those drivers we see often here on the KBueno Racing Network, but he's got a hefty challenger to the inside. These are the top 2 in the point standings heading into the next week's race, which is points paying at Charlotte. And so 2 of the drivers heavily in the fight for the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series Championship will put those mentalities to the wayside and just race for the cash, race for the fun. And here we are in the All-Star race. We're glad that you're with us. Banks and Porter to the green flag. So far, so good in the battle for the lead. Porter swoops around the outside. And Jaden Porter takes the lead on lap number 2 of the All-Star race. Brandon Banks giving him a shot on the inside, but it did not work. The high side momentum goes in the favor of car number 82. And there's Cedric Hunter making a move for 3rd in turn 3. Hunter, a 2-time winner this season. Iowa Speedway the first, Texas the second. And both came on wild strategy calls in an all-star race like this, where strategy may mean the difference between being first or being last. Hunter's going to pull out all of the tricks, and he's got his good friend and teammate in this race with him all the way back in this field, Zachary Hall, winning the 2nd stage of the KBRN Open Challenge and defending series champion, making his triumphant return to the series. But Cedric already looking to become a frontrunner in this championship as he tries to hold off Warren Kyle Keith. Cannot shut the door, and Keith runs around the outside looking for a way to find his way through Brandon Banks in the run for 2nd. And a beautiful drive from Warren Kyle Keith. Slips into 2nd. Here comes Hunter for 3rd. And Jesse Whittington running back in the 5th place spot. Looking for a way to get around. What a season it's been. Jesse Whittington back and forth. Lots of pace in 2026, but great to see him back. We saw him out of commission for a little while in this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, but one of those few runners who made an early name for himself in the final years of the Sunoco Cup era. Back in the action, you see that 94 plastered on the left side of his screen. His cockpit look, he is locked in, trying to find his way through with our Charlie Buyer photography onboard camera, and an early fallout for Brandon Banks after starting on the front row and on the pole position. Brandon Banks nearly succumbing to a top 5 and relegating to the back half of the top 10. You saw that move from Whittington on the inside, but he'll hit the reset button and try again with Muscarella and a few other Chevrolets right behind him, and a Ford Mustang in that mellow yellow car of Richard Swabley finally making his way to the bottom. And in this battle for 8th, you watch these two Chevrolets go at it. Harlow on the outside, Perusini on the bottom. And this is already rekindling some of those memories from the KBRN Open Challenge earlier on tonight, where Harlow was banging doors of Perusini on the back straightaway, trying to sneak through and qualify after stage 1 at lap number 20, but instead had to race his way back through the field, got the car repaired, and this car in full shape right now, stepping into the top 7. In this first segment, Perusini will have to look back, try to nose to the inside and fire on Richard Swabley. Will fire here in 3, and will do so there off of turn number 2, as Richard Swabley nearly getting the wall, getting the wall. Alex Muscarella, here comes Harlow with 2 for 1 in turn 3. There's the onboard look from Harlow. Just a relentless spirit from this New Haven, Vermont native, a driver who's been sim racing for a few years and spends his time off the track as a strength and conditioning coach. Harlow had to repair a very ill race car at the end of stage number 1. That contact with Perusini fighting for the 3rd spot ended up putting him all the way back to the end of the field, but repaired that car in those caution laps that did not count, rallied his way back to the top 5 and put himself in that qualifying position in the end of lap number 40. So a relentless effort for Harlow, and he continues to swoop into the top 7. Meanwhile, Bacalhau cutting his teeth at the exit of turn 2, swooping on the inside, firing here on the 48 of Muscarella, nearly contact entering turn 3. Justin Erb, Zachary Hall, all of those qualifiers in the KBRN Open Challenge having to dig from within, only on lap number 10 here in this 50-lap segment. And Bacalhau, a driver who dominated that first stage of the KBRN Open Challenge, the Hialeah, Florida native, taking a win this season at the Kentucky Speedway in dominant fashion and setting the brand new record for most laps led in a single race by a winning driver. Bacalhau set the record straight, however, not enough to be able to qualify immediately into the All-Star main. Had to run his way through the Open because he is not a full-time driver. And at the front of this field, where everyone wants to be, Warren Kyle Keith prepping up a charge on Jaden Porter for the top spot on the back straightaway. Watch that move, high side run for Warren Kyle Keith. That seems to be the preferable line for a lot of drivers in this All-Star main, and even through the Open Challenge we saw earlier on tonight, that 737 horsepower package. Trend towards the higher banking on the outside of the racetrack, 24 degrees here in Charlotte. And so with that higher power, you don't want to wear the right front down, so everyone decides we'll wear the right rear instead. As here comes Keith, firing on the bottom, looking for a way to strike under the Ally Chevrolet. Plays the defense nicely in the middle. Porter holds on to the lead off turn 4. So Porter holds on to the lead, Keith back in second, and it's a potential fight for the 3rd spot, as Cedric Hunter and Brandon Banks potentially go at it in the run-up for the podium position. Again, it doesn't matter where you finish at the end of this first segment. As long as you make that pit stop, a mandatory one, whether it be for tires or fuel, that's all you have to do in order to qualify for the next segment that leads to lap 85. Warren Kyle Keith is not the one for waiting. He'll turn to the inside. Underneath Jaden Porter, battle for the lead. Keith tries to stay, and Keith cannot. Porter finds his way back around the outside. And now this NOS Energy Ford Mustang has to think, How can I get around this Kentucky driver? Hunter and Banks, third and fourth. Their battle continues on. Here comes Banks, roll to the outside. He's got a shot back for third, and he drifts around the outside of turn number 1. Brandon Banks sailing back into the third spot. Keith trying to find a way to wiggle around this 82 car. Another shot, another peek, holds back in line, back to turn 3. And this is just one of those nights for Warren Kyle Keith. Back to the bottom at the exit turn 4. And a lap 17, we've got a battle for the lead again. Keith to the bottom, sending turn 1, sliding in front of the 82. Porter looking for the crossover, exit of the corner, on the straightaway, can't do it. New race leader from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Here comes Porter back for the fight. Counter punch 3 and 4, unsuccessful, didn't land. And Warren Kyle Keith back to the front of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series field. And this time it's under the lights in the All-Star race. Two top 10s in his last 3. Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series races that paid points. A career best second on multiple occasions. And steadied back behind Cedric Hunter, the eventual winner of the Texas Motor Speedway race in our last mile-and-a-half trip of the season so far. And Warren just looking for that elusive first win. He's told us multiple times on interviews on the KBueno Racing Network that he's been so close, very agonizingly close at times, but he wants that first win badly. He knows he's got the skill, he's got the speed to be able to do it. Several times this season, he's been up there, fighting for the lead, leading laps. It's just been about bad luck that has caught him at the worst times. And now lap number 20 with 30 laps to go in this first segment from Charlotte. He's got a chance to patrol the way through and get his way into that 15-lap final segment for all the cash and an all-star win as Jaden Porter starts to fall by the wayside. Inside went Brandon Banks, and now Cedric Hunter making a move to the bottom in 3. So it's Keith, Banks, Porter, Hunter, and Bacalhau, the current top 5. Bacalhau able to pull away from the rest of this field after getting his way through, running that very high side of the racetrack. And Stephen Harlow runs right behind in 6th place. Next best battle is right here for about 8th place on the racetrack. We saw Alex Muscarella get a piece of the outside wall at the exit of turn 2 and also wrangled some damage on the left front of his Chevrolet. So the DTH team car will be running back in 9th. As Zachary Hall and Richard Swavely potentially go at it for the 10th and 11th place spots on the speedway coming back to turn 1. And we've seen a lot of these drivers already battle well, but of course we haven't seen them be up to the level of some of those at the front of this field. We get a Charlie Byer photography onboard look with Swavely. And you can see, even with the elevated power, it's still fairly difficult, especially to make moves here at Charlotte. And when that high side kicks in, the rubber starts cutting through. It's much harder to plant that throttle on the inside, and here comes Swavely already looking for pit road, cooking the entry. He's going to find a way in, so Swavely makes his first stop. Of course, one of those mandatory stops you have to make here in the All-Star main. He decides to chew first. And as Brandon Banks slowly creeps up on the race leader inside 23 laps through, now we ask the question whether any one of these top 5 decide it's their time to come down pit road. Cedric Hunter runs low, but instead trying to chase over Jaden Porter and get in some of that clean air. Nobody else in this field electing to come down pit road this time by. So Swavely really being the only taker, and the only other being Kevin Roy, who pitted roughly 8 laps ago back in 16th. Garrett Walden also visited pit road on lap number 12. So under green, the Walmart Chevrolet decided track position wasn't necessarily in his favor to start. He was running behind the 8 ball at the green flag of this All-Star race, so holds back for now as Brandon Banks wants more than just to piggyback in top 2. He wants to be the race leader, nosing ahead of the start-finish line. Outside, turn 1 for the lead. Can he make the move? Yes, he can. Brandon Banks back to the outside, back to the top spot. Porter swinging down low in turn 3. And now after that attempt, here comes the former race leader of the event, Bacalhau, on pit road as well. And we'll kick off the pit stop sequence at lap number 25, halfway through this first segment here from Charlotte Motor Speedway. There's a look from Harlow as he runs in the top 10 and just coming down pit road with the attempt to get either 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles or just a bit of a splash and go. Here at Charlotte, doesn't matter about fuel to make it to lap 50. You just have to be the best car there, and you have to make that one pit stop. Keith decides after giving away the lead, his time is now. Hop on the brakes, lock of the curb. He's on pit road this time by, and Warren Kyle Keith will drop track position. Brandon Banks in turn will take the race lead here at Charlotte. And that one pit stop going to be very important, of course, with that cycle through if we stay green. Those cautions will bring everyone back together, but as soon as we see a green flag run develop, if it stays through lap 50, it's going to be fun to see where all these drivers cycle through. Porter, of course, the first of the top 4 to visit pit road, so he will take his shot. Gamble now. Brandon Banks is in lap 27. Brandon Banks coming into tonight as the points leader here from Charlotte Motor Speedway, a driver that desperately really wants a drop in the Hammah Cup Series championship and has already won multiple races as Warren Kyle Keith stuck on pit road, a speeding penalty for the 24 car. A 44-second stop for Warren Kyle Keith, and the former race leader goes 2 laps down as Jaden Porter so far takes the net race lead off of all the drivers with new tires. Cedric Hunter, it appears, has come in. Zachary Hall, his teammate as well, so they conjoin on the pit call. And those two will come in together. Ray Rogers, Alex Muscarella, their time is now. And the 2 teammates will come in right as we hit the 20 lap to go marker before this first segment is all said and done. And the new race leader, Garrett Walden, should be the net spot with Jaden Porter hot on his tails, trying to take the lead away. Difference of 15 laps from Walden to Porter. Advantage 28 car. Inside, Justin Erb goes for the entry of pit road. And here comes Porter, looking for the lead. Searching in turn 1, diving on the fresh grip. Walden's going to give way, and Jaden Porter back to the lead here from Charlotte. Now it's, of course, trying to get around and trying to make sure his teammate doesn't beat him to the charge. Walden's giving him a good shot. Porter finally makes his way through, and Jaden Porter coming around this time by, looking for the race lead with 20 laps to go. In this first segment, outside of pit road goes Justin Erb, so Jaden Porter will take over the spot and will continue green here in our first segment here from Charlotte Motor Speedway. So for Jaden Porter this season, it has been very consistent. Top 3 in the point standings, chasing Brandon Banks for the lead of the chase. And entering the Drop in the Hammah Cup Series, end of the regular season, they'll enter a chase format with, of course, the top drivers in the points will move on through. And it's no longer a win-and-you're-in situation. So it's become a situation where now you have to be the most consistent driver. And Jaden, who's told us on Wednesday nights in 4-wide that he really wishes it was a chase format because of how good he's been week in and week out. He's just really liking the situation here in the Drop in the Hammah Cup Series, knowing how good he's been in points, how solid he's been around all season, and the driver who's won a few races in his Drop in the Hammah Cup Series career. Trying, of course, to gun at it for some cash prize tonight, and at Charlotte next week, going at it for another race victory. Bacalhau makes his way around Walden in the battle for second. Caught the outside wall there in turns 1 and 2, trying to get around Walden. And the 30 KBRN machine finally makes his way through, the winner of the first stage in the KBRN Open Challenge. And the field has spread apart. And after Warren Kyle Keith's pit stop on 44 seconds, he has gone back from the race lead to 15th place. Now 1 lap down on the racetrack, needing a yellow to get that lucky dog position. And Richard Swavely, we've got word, also trouble on pit road. 54.8 seconds for the mellow yellow Ford Mustang. And so he will serve that penalty. He'll be back a lap down in 16th place. So the biggest loser out of all the drivers at the front of this field cycling through might have just been Brandon Banks, dropping back from the lead. Of course, taking it back on saving his Goodyear Eagles from the early portions of that run, and still can make up a few spots before this is all said and done. A few car lengths behind Matthew Perusini in the battle for 6th place. However, the South Carolina native looking, of course, for another win. And pitting later than everyone else on the cycle, has the freshest set of tires for the most part, apart from Cedric Hunter, but still has yet to make up the track position that he wanted to regain right as that sequence is coming around for a close with 15 laps to go in segment number 1. And at the moment, it is all Jaden Porter in control. His teammate not too far behind, back to turn 1. There's that onboard look from Porter, and it is getting close for the race lead. As we watch this battle for 4th place, Stephen Harlow, Cedric Hunter, and slowly trying to flush down the 43 of Garrett Walden, who has spent his time out on the racetrack on the oldest set of Goodyear Eagles. Hunter fires to the inside, looking for a shot inside the top 4. Harlow will hold back in turn 1, and now the biggest question mark, can they get around the slower traffic up in front? Hunter points his nose to the inside. Harlow's going to look for the next move. Harlow goes under. Harlow looks for 3 wide. Harlow pushes Hunter down the straightaway. Turn 3. And nearly thought about 3 wide. Hunter's loose in turn 3. Trying to save it. Gets into Garrett Walden. Spins around exit turn 4. First yellow flag flies in the All-Star main. And it's the 2-time winner this season in trouble. And that is not the way you want this race to go if you are Cedric Hunter. Some left rear damage, the driver in peril, having to tow it out of pit road. And it was in that battle with Stephen Harlow. So you look here, Harlow makes the move, looking for 3 wide, pushes the 45. We call that aero packing. The air gets sent off of the rear spoiler. Car loses that transition grip. And in other words, Hunter just goes around. Car steps out loose, tries to save it. Extra contact from the 43 of Garrett Walden. Here's the look from Hunter entering turn 3. There's nowhere to hide for Hunter. And goes around to the exit of turn 4 and picks up that left rear toe-link suspension damage. And that will most likely have him out of tonight's All-Star race from Charlotte. The good news for Cedric Hunter is that he'll be able to most likely continue if that car does not have too much damage on it. Of course, with these caution laps not counting, it's the opportunity for drivers to get repairs on pit road without losing that much track position nor losing the laps on the speedway. And of course, for everyone to come down pit road this time by. So as we near the 10 lap to go marker in segment 1, it is Jaden Porter, Francisco Bacallao, Garrett Walden, Brandon Banks, and Matthew Perusini, the current running top 5, after Cedric Hunter goes for a spill entering turn 3, and most likely will be out of tonight's All-Star affair. So drivers on pit road, 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles and fuel to send them out for the rest of the segment. And a very quick stop. Brandon Banks making it happen. 9.7 seconds on a 2-tire call. Gets Brandon Banks to the front. And 2 drivers decide they're going to stay out. Warren Kyle Keith ends up second. And Stephen Harlow going to be the driver that ends up being the first one behind the iRacing official pace car. Brandon Banks will be out first. Jaden Porter coming out second, 16.1 seconds. And you'll move on through. Matthew Perosini back in fourth. Chuck Stevens back in fifth. And Francisco Bacalhau telling us 1 minute of damage repair on his race car. So what might have happened to Bacalhau there for some damage on his show as he runs back in 14th and over 1 minute pit stop for the Hialeah, Florida native. So a very interesting situation there for the driver of the 30. He'll spend his time on pit road, and there he goes coming out. So we'll see exactly what goes down for Bacalhau. But let's get a moment to chat with the 45 of Cedric Hunter, driver involved in our first caution here in the All-Star race. And Cedric, glad that you're joining us. We saw you there getting around Garrett Walden. What did you see there, and what did you feel behind the wheel as you got through?
Car felt really good. Had really good speed, actually. I think I would have probably made my way back up to, I mean, for sure the top three. Probably the, I don't know, maybe I would have been able to win that stage or whatever you want to call that run. Got side drafted in the backstretch, which obviously killed momentum. Tried to pass the 43, blocked the 6, and I guess he was upset and decided to air grief the life out of me. So just got really loose going into turn 3, and then it was kind of over from there. Once I was sideways, I got tagged, and it just broke my my car. Car's now irreparable, so we're out for the night. But feeling really good about next week. We have really good pace. I think I'll probably just win next week just to make up for it.
All right, Cedric, well, we appreciate the time. Tough break there, but if anything were to happen in the negative way, it would be here in this All-Star race, and better for it to happen here than at a points-paying effort that we'll see next week at this very same track. Cedric, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us, and best of luck next week.
Thanks, man.
That is Cedric Hunter, driver who was in contention to win tonight, and now we'll cheer on his teammate and good friend, Zachary Hall, who is still in this race, restarting back in 12th position. So our final 10 laps here in segment 1 from Charlotte, it's Stephen Harlow on a no-stop call. Brendan Banks on a 2-tire decision. Green flag back in the air. Wonderful jump from Harlow. Porter ends up back to the inside, takes away second in turn 1. Perosini and Chuck Stevens go at it for 4th place. As here comes Banks to the inside of Porter for second. Fighting just like they did on the opening lap of the affair. Porter breaks free, noses ahead, door to door, dead heat back to turn 1 for second. Porter's got the run on the high side. He'll make it work. Exit turn 2 on the banking. That red, white, and blue HendrickCars.com Chevrolet fights on the inside, side drafting the Ally Chevrolet to make it even back to turn 3. Porter running the boards. Banks on the white line to the inside of the racetrack, and Stephen Harlow holding on for now. The question is, how long can it last with 8 laps to go? It's a 3-way fight. Here comes Porter. Banks to the inside. 3 wide for the lead, and Jaden Porter emerges ahead. What a drive! Jaden Porter makes it work, wrangles the competition, and with 7 laps to go in segment 1, Stephen Harlow in the deep sea, Perosini on the inside, and Porter back in control. Can you believe that? On the freshest set of tires in the field. And now it's 2 versus 4 as they come around for 6 laps to go. Perosini still in the ongoing battle with Harlow, and they've brought everybody to the party. Stevens, Whittington, Erb, everyone's in it. Back to turn 1. And remember, no advancements until we get to lap 85, where that segment changes, and it's all about who ends up moving through to the final 15-lap segment. Banks and Porter want to make it sure that they're going to be there in the final 15. Banks back to the inside, looking for an approach on the bottom shelf. He's got an entry off of turn 4. 5 laps to go in segment 1. What a battle this has been. Two strong drivers at the peak of their Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series careers. And the drivers who battle it out for the lead in the championship every single week. Now going toe-to-toe for the lead in this all-star race in the first segment. 4 to go. Perusini is clear for third. Chuck Stevens back a few car lengths, and Bakayao going at it with Ray Rogers for 7. In his comeback try, after early damage on the race car, Brandon Banks still underneath. Left side tires reaching for the paint. Porter's in the sky. Porter's got a chance to run through. Porter's got the move ahead. Contact down the quad oval and back to the line. They end up once again dead heat for the lead. How long will it take before anyone else catches up? Banks still remaining on the bottom. No flinching from either one of these two drivers. And it's the HendrickCars.com Chevrolet trying to nose ahead. Does so. Split second. Porter's got the run. Porter back on the top. Still even for the lead with the final 2 laps in the first segment. You cannot script this here at Charlotte. It is cinema in its all-time form. It's still side by side for the lead. Banks on the bottom has the run. Porter bobbles. Porter to the inside. A crossover attempt. Exit turn 4. What a drive. Porter back to the bottom for the lead. It's the slider in 1. Banks to the bottom. Banks around the inside again. Final chance. Segment 1 will come to a close here at Charlotte. And it's the two drivers straight up dominating the last run. Brandon Banks to the line. And segment 1 has been an all-time classic. Brandon Banks has one more. Porter will have to hold back in second. Perusini has gained ground, but he remains back in third. And through segment number 1, it is Brandon Banks coming across the line. Banks will take segment 1 here from Charlotte. What a race. And that is nothing but respect from those two drivers. They have raced each other hard each and every week in this main season. And in this all-star race, they gave it their all in that end of the last run. And they brought you side-by-side racing for lap after lap after lap. And it's Brandon Banks, one of the few representing drivers for Drinkin' Bros Racing left in this series after Lawson Peel makes his departure after the end of Season 1. Whether it be Banks, Kip Easley, and a few others that represent Drinkin' Bros Racing, this 5 car has carried the torch and moves his way into the All-Star Segment 1 victory. And takes that momentum into the 35-lap second stage, taking us to lap 85 of the affair. So pit stops underway. Drivers in their different calls in their main pit stop after the first yellow of the affair, taking 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. As Brandon Banks, Jaden Porter go away, Jesse Whittington will take over the lead off of pit road. 2-tire call, 9.2 second stop. It's Swavely and Kevin Roy that are listed as the race leaders. However, Swavely was out trying to get his lap back. They have visited pit road. So the new race leader coming into our next segment, it is Jesse Whittington in the number 94 Chevrolet, a driver who so far has impressed a bit in his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series campaign in his technically first season. Although with this group, he's been around a little while. A few years back, in the Sunoco Cup affair, and a career-best 4th place after starting top 5 last week at the Virtual Auto Club Speedway, and tonight at Charlotte, hanging around the top 10 and a chance to potentially grab himself a victory here tonight. So let's see if we get a word with the driver of this number 94 machine. Jesse, you got a copy with us?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, Jesse. Well, welcome back. It's great to talk to you once more. A 2-tire call here before the 35-lap second segment. Tell us about this call and what the mindset is here coming to the green flag.
I mean, to be honest with you, man, it just came down to, I saw during that first segment, people were taking 2 tires and holding on to some really good speed. So I figured clean air track position means a lot. So not really planning on going all out here, save a little bit and get these 35 laps in and just try to hold on to a top 10 to make it to the final segment.
So we've seen the competition tonight. Of course, great battling for the lead. You had to cut your teeth in the middle of this pack where it really did get very spicy at times. For you, how difficult do you think it's going to be to hold on to a top 10, just given the competition that we've seen tonight and the way the drivers are racing?
Yeah, I mean, as long as I don't get wrecked, I think it's possible. I definitely feel like I have top 5, top 10 speed. I don't know if I have winning speed, but I feel decent, so it shouldn't be too hard as long as I can play a little bit of the aero game and keep some clean air on the nose.
All right, Jesse, well, we appreciate the time. Best of luck here as you take the lead for segment 2.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night.
Jesse Whittington, one of those Cypress Academy drivers with his teammates, Matthew Perusini, Charles Stevens, Garrett Walden, all of them good friends and teammates here at the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series. They watch their good friend, Jesse Whittington, on a 2-tire call take the green flag. We're green in segment 2. And it's a battle between PBR teammates in second. Bacalhau on the inside. Tap of the wall, Jaden Porter. Tap of the wall, a few more. And Whittington really in control. A few car lengths over Jaden Porter. Bacalhau holds on to third, and Brandon Banks on a slow start. Perusini chasing him at the exit of 4. Meanwhile, Charles Stevens and Justin Erb in their battle for 6th place runs back to turn 1. Chevrolets versus a Ford. Inside and outside, the 2 Cypress Academy teammates. And the SKM Ford Mustang on his own, qualified from the Open Challenge earlier on tonight on a very great effort in the top 5 at the end of that 40-lap stint. And although he wasn't able to squeak into the top 3 at the end of the run, he'll get tapped by Stevens, exit turn 4. What a save! Justin Erb holds on to the race car, will stay green. And it is not easy to pass on the inside, and you can tell why. Stevens just trying to use the throttle in the middle of turn 3. Erb trying to maintain the middle lane. And Stevens just got a little too high. Carries Erb up the banking. Second tap is the one that saves him. And he keeps his car away from ultimate calamity. Justin Erb drops the track position. But he'll be still in this race, trying to hold on to the top 10. Again, at lap 85, we cut this field down to just 10 drivers for a 15-lap stint. And they can make any pit road call they like in that yellow flag sequence. But of course, the idea, just like Whittington just told us, is to stay top 10 and just hang in the balance. Right now, he's got the good preferred view, 3/10 ahead of our next race driver in Jaden Porter running second. Bacalhau holds on to third. And Brandon Banks, who settles into the top 4 right in front of Matthew Perusini, who was in a similar position, top 3 at the end of the KBueno Open Challenge in Stage 1, and was able to just barely get through after Stephen Harlow gave him a run for his money at the end. Bacalhau, what a drive in turn 3, sending it underneath on the blue and white paint. On Jaden Porter, can't quite complete the pass, and the 2 good friends and teammates will carry on. When it's all about track position, you turn to the fundamentals of this NASCAR Next Gen car and how important that has become over the last year or so. It's almost been a full year since iRacing introduced the new aerodynamic updates for this Next Gen Cup car, implementing the dirty air, implementing the tire wear, and implementing all of the drafting physics that the Cup Series drivers encounter in real life, like they did at the Kansas Speedway. Hard hit to the outside wall. Richard Swabley, out of nowhere, got banged out of line and will take his car right to pit road. His All-Star night is over at lap 57. Second look on our replay. And once again, this issue involves the 84 of Chuck Stevens. So makes a move on the bottom. Tries to send it on the inside of Richard Swabley. And similar to what we saw in that contact with Justin Erb, just ran up high. Swabley nowhere to go. And a hard hit to the right front of the tire. Car goes around. Car goes to the bottom of the racetrack. And the suspension on the right front is toast. Richard Swabley, now the newest DNF here from Charlotte Motor Speedway, and will not see the final segment of tonight's affair. Bakayao runs fast, turn 2 exit from the high shelf, and takes the bottom in turn 3, looking for second. Porter gives him the way. And now the potential crossover off turn 4, and saves it for potentially this final end of the run. So it's 35 laps, and although with this next-gen car you want to maintain track position, you also want to hold on to the shoes on the race car. Jesse Whittington, most importantly, out of this bunch on the 2-tire call, as everyone else took 4. But we saw just how important it was for Brandon Banks to make hay in that first run of the first segment tonight. How he dropped from the race lead, saving his tires, fell back to as far as 4th place. And then all of a sudden, as everybody had the tires wear down, rallied back through the field, made his impression, and then battled for the lead at the end of that second run with Jaden Porter to be able to close out the first 50 laps tonight. But you see what's going on between these two drivers at the front of this field. And of course, what's going down is we get a great onboard look with Perosini. We've been told by the drivers, all of the feedback from this 110% power package, you go from 670 to 737. And although the setup doesn't change, although the weight doesn't change, the fundamentals of the car after about 5 to 6 laps, it does change. They've told us, quote, after about 5 laps, this car starts to become a lot more tricky to handle. Even with the bumped up power, this car has a ton of downforce at the underbody of it all. But of course, you take in the first few laps, tires get warm, doesn't necessarily feel like too much of a difference from the original package. And then you put some laps into it, you put that heat cycle through its bar, and all of a sudden, you've got a very differently handling race car than you did in the early portion of the run. And that's why saving the tires has been so crucial to these drivers all night long here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, a track that naturally has degraded the Goodyear Eagles overruns in any package you run with it. But you add the power to this car, you put some more fire on the rear end of this car, and you start to make it just a bit more of a beast. It's been something that the drivers have been talking about ever since the recent update that added the possibility of creating more power for all cars on the sim. For a balance of performance update, it was one that really catered to the sports car crowd, to have all of the different manufacturers that have different performance ratings to be able to be more equal with each other in any given race, whether it being hosted or league affairs. Well, the Oval crowd got a realization that it's not just for the sports car drivers, it could be for everyone on the sim, and includes every single car. So they bumped up the power here in the next gen era, and all of the drivers in this series getting a load of those tests earlier in the week before this race tonight from Charlotte. And we'll take in all of those notes learned from tonight's affair, all those points-paying drivers going for the main points-paying Charlotte Motor Speedway race at a longer distance that we will have later on tonight. So it's 21 laps to go, 20 now at the stripe, before we conclude segment number 2 here from Charlotte. Again, we run to lap number 85 before the top 10 get decided as the advancement. And 11th on back is going to be going home. Right now, top 10 is held by Warren Kyle Keith. His teammate Kevin Roy not too far behind in 11th. And so that will be the transfer spot coming back around to this 85th lap. And then, of course, we'll have that final yellow. We'll decide the 10 that move on, and those drivers will then duke it out for the $25 at the end of this affair tonight. And it's only 2 tenths between those two teammates. So either way, a mistake from the 24 car could bring the 22 in, or potentially the 22's mistake could keep the 24 in front. And we saw the St. Augustine, Florida native, a driver who works on his off time when not racing in the sim as a discount tire associate. A driver who has been so close to winning many times in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career, and even led a few laps earlier tonight in this All-Star race before having some problems, went multiple laps down. And what a drive it's been to recover to this point. To even have a remote shot of getting back into the All-Star main and having a shot at moving into the final 15-lap dash, it is certainly impressive for the Florida driver. Now watching Ray Rogers and Garrett Walden, two Chevrolets, go at it for 8th place. Again, they know what's at stake if they hold on to a top 10 spot, and they do not want to lose that much time, because if Warren Kyle Keith can start to plan an attack, it could be very dangerous for that Ryobi Chevrolet. He may get bounced out from the transfer spot. He will lose the initial spot for 10th on Warren Kyle Keith. Dart to the inside. Kevin Roy wants some more. Rogers deals the block. High entry turn 1. And the battle for the transfer kicks in with about 15 laps to go in segment 2. Brandon Banks found his way to tire save and now finds his way underneath, paving his path on Bacayao for 3rd. And somehow Brandon Banks knows how to save tires with this next-gen car. He knows how to be fast in the late portions of the run. Here's the onboard look with Banks. Stellar drive from two of the best drivers we've seen all season long in Jaden Porter and Brandon Banks, potentially framing up a new battle inside the final laps of this segment. 14 to go next time by, and slowly but surely Jaden Porter is gaining ground on Jesse Whittington. Last lap by, nearly a full 1/10 of a second faster at a 29.793. Whittington at a 29.892. Ally Chevrolet just inching closer, but we've seen before. Again, track position and tires do matter. However, that dirty air, the biggest situation that you have to find yourself around, and if Whittington can play these lines correctly, he said play the aero games in that interview right before we got that green flag restart, and just hold on to a top 10. That is all that Whittington needs to stay alive for the final 15-lap dash for the cash prize. But it's Jaden Porter that wants his clean air. He wants the lead. Point of the nose to the inside. He's got to run off turn 4. Porter for the lead on lap number 73. Again, it's 4 tires versus 2. Jesse Whittington on a 9.2 second stop. Jaden Porter on a 14.6 second run in his pit box. He's through. Garrett Walden in trouble. Turn 2. Hard hit to the inside wall. Is Walden out? A substantial hit. Caution flag flies with 12 laps to go. And it's Garrett Walden, the man in trouble. A substantial hit for Garrett Walden. Ends up sideways at the exit of turn 2. And here's the second look. So just runs underneath Stephen Harlow. Those two Chevrolets going at it. I think got a little close to the exit of turn 2. Washed up high. And just tallied off in a hard hit. Car caught air on all 4 tires. And Garrett Walden with a substantial smack to the inside safer barrier. And again, we've talked about how troublesome it's been to pass on the inside of the racetrack. This onboard look from Walden will show you just how difficult it's been. Charles Stevens being involved in several incidents tonight. A lot of those have come from attempted passes here on the inside of the racetrack. Car just washed up, right front tire went away. Just nudged off the 6, who banged off the wall. And a sizable piece of contact for Garrett Walden most likely will kill the toe link and most likely will send him out of tonight's race. So the drivers are in pit road for what may be the final time tonight before this segment is over. With 12 laps to go at lap number 73, Whittington is able to keep his track position, and just like he did on the last stop, 2 fresh Goodyear Eagles, Whittington back to the lead. So it's Whittington and Porter who end up out of pit lane first. Brandon Banks with a pretty slow pit stop. Warren Kyle Keith ending up out first on a 9.4 second stop. So your top 3 on just 2 fresh Goodyear Eagles. Everyone else has decided to slap on 4. So we got our moment to talk with the driver of the number 94 in Jesse Whittington. Why don't we bring back the driver who broadcasted with us in the KBueno Open Challenge and now runs second in the All-Star main race in segment 2. We're now joined by the second place driver of Jaden Porter. Jaden, this run has been really fun to watch from our end. You and Brandon Banks going at it side by side. A 2-tire call here in the final portions of segment 2. What was the mindset for that decision and what you're going to try to do to be up in front before that final segment comes through?
Just to try to get clean air. I think that run right there, I found a line where I can finally keep my right front on a little bit. And if I can get my clean air back, I did get it back, and then Jesse wanted to move me. I passed him clean, so I don't understand the reason to move me, but I guess racing an all-star race, so anything goes, I guess. So just keep it in mind, I guess.
Air has been a big conversation through it all. You trying to get around Jesse, you playing the games with Brandon Banks for the lead. How do you anticipate this restart will go, starting outside of row number 1 and potentially having to shove off whoever's on third on back?
Well, I hope I get a good enough start to stay next to Jesse to where maybe I can clear him off turn 2 or have the outside lane into turn 3. Really don't want to lose too many spots here because I don't know what the strategy is going to be this next stint, the last 15. So I don't know. It's going to be wild. So hopefully we'll put on a show for you guys.
Should be a lot of fun to watch you out there, Jaden. Best of luck here on the restart.
All right, thank you, buddy.
Jaden Porter joined us for the KBueno Open Challenge. Qualifying well here for the All-Star main race, starting on the outside of row number 1 with Brandon Banks. Again, him and Banks, 2 contenders in the main championship this season. That is not entirely a thing to be worried about in this All-Star race. Right now, it's about staying alive in the top 10. 12 laps to go until segment 2 is closed. Porter shuts off the door. Warren Kyle Keith looking to the inside. Battle for second, turn 1. And Keith is getting flushed back. Bacalhau waits his chance. Banks makes a move up high for third. And it's Whittington with a wonderful jump. Out in front by a few car lengths. They're flirting with disaster out in the top 10. Right now, Zachary Hall has the final spot in. Once we get to lap 85, side by side for third place. Brandon Banks holding up strong. Warren Kyle Keith to the inside. He's got a shot. Banks with the crossover. No. Bacalhau out of the bottom. Now he wants fourth. We have seen some pretty aggressive sends from all of these drivers in the top 5. And it's Jaden Porter now trying to hound in the 94 machine, coming in down to our final 10 laps of this affair in segment 2. There's the line up high. Porter's going to get the run on the back straightaway. Will he have enough to make up the time on Whittington? Right now the answer is nobody's there. Warren Kyle Keith holds the bottom. Bacalhau in a strong pursuit for third. It's 1, 2, 3. Chevy Ford back to turn 1. And now Whittington holds up high. He wants to shut down any amount of source material for the 82 machine, and it works. Keeps him back at bay. Zachary Hall still the transfer driver right now, as Stephen Harlow and Matthew Perosini shake it out for 7th place. And Harlow's got the run. He'll stay in front. Perosini holds back for now. All about grit here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Everyone holding on to the bottom. Jaden Porter under fire, and this time it's from the Floridian of Warren. Kyle Keith took a shot to the bottom. This time you'll have to hit the reset button as he comes back to turn 3. Porter's still in his pursuit for the top spot. But again, as long as you stay in the top 10, that is all that matters. And right now, top 10 is nearly at jeopardy. Justin Erb has the spot. Zachary Hall falls out of contention to compete for the All-Star win. Charles Stevens alongside. We'll keep an eye on whether Justin Erb can hold on to his spot or if there's more dangerous situations on the horizon. But coming down to 5 laps to go in segment 2. It has been all about Jesse Whittington since that caution flag came out. Took the 2-tire call. And in that Big Fish Barbecue Chevrolet, Jesse Whittington, everything in his power to hold on, stay clear. He hits the outside wall. Porter's going to creep up just a bit. He's within a car length to turn 3. And Bacalhau gets turned. Exit turn 4. Caution flag out again. It was a touch from Brandon Banks, and Bacalhau goes for the spill on the final corner. There's the second look. Bacalhau getting the dirty air from Warren Kyle Keith. Loose off turn 4. And then just got tapped from behind by Brandon Banks on the way out. Second look from the aerial shot. You'll see that 30 blue and black. KBueno Racing Toyota. Moving to the inside, he gets Keith in the attempt for 3rd, and then here comes Banks, head of steam off the corner. And Bacalhau just loose from the get-go. And there was nowhere to go, so got loose right before Banks had gotten into him, but there was the difference of speed. And Banks just had that closing rate off turn 4, just gets the tap on the rear end. And Bacalhau goes for the spill. Great job saving the car on the inside of the racetrack, but he will be among some of those drivers to be out on the racetrack. And now with all of that track position lost, having to scrap through to the top 10 to be able to have any shot remotely into this final segment of the night. Again, it's 15 laps, 11th on back, will be getting sent home. So it's really just going to be an all-time duel to be able to stay in front and be able to hang on for some track position at the end of it all. So Bacalhau got the nudge. He'll be restarting back in 13th place. So not entirely too out of it. Still a few more spots to gain if he wants to be considered part of that final run. And we're joined by Francisco now. Francisco, you saw that happen there off of turn 4. What did you feel behind the wheel in that moment?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Just aero packing struck. I went down to the inside. Warren covered me, and then as getting off the corner, see Banks get a run, and car just spun. It didn't do that on any lap of this race so far. And as soon as he got within a car length of me, there's nothing I could do before I realized he was there. The car was just spun out.
So it was a really harmless spin. You don't get damaged. Car ends up getting off of turn 4, spun around. You lose track position. You restart 13th here. Top 10 make it on to that final segment. What are you going to try to do here to gain those spots and be a part of that top 10 group by the time this race is done?
We're both about to find out.
All right. Well, Francisco, best of luck on the restart. We'll see what happens here.
Appreciate it.
That's Francisco Bacalhau. Harmless spin, exit turn 4 off the contact from Brandon Banks. And guess what? We'll do it all over again before segment 2 is done here from Charlotte. And this time, a 5-lap dash to the finish of the second segment tonight. We're glad that you're joining us on the KBueno Racing Network tonight. Kenneth Bueno bringing you all the action from Charlotte Motor Speedway. And again, more action here from the Queen City next week. Same track, same place, just a different horsepower package and a lot more points on the line. Charlotte Motor Speedway next Sunday for Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series regular season action. We continue through, and again, our second No Bull 5 race of the season. We had our first No Bull 5 race for a cash prize at the virtual Daytona International Speedway to kick off the season. Second one will be at Charlotte, so some extra points and prizes on the line here in just 1 week time. But we still got an all-star race to decide. Jesse Whittington in command of the next restart. Porter tries to match him. They both wiggle in the run-up through the gears. And it's Warren Kyle Keith who takes advantage through to second in turn 1. Top 10 make it in. Chuck Stevens is the last driver through. Tap of the outside wall. Everyone trying for their best run. Harlow slamming to the inside. Wants a look on Brandon Banks for 4th. But it's Jesse Whittington, 4 laps to go as Keith and Porter hold on. Even back to turn 1, side by side. Porter's back under fire like he was at the tail end of the last run. And now shuts the door firmly on the 24 car. And can anyone else make a run? Alex Muscarellas to the inside of Stephen Harlow. 2 teammates working at it for 5th. And Matthew Perusini just watching on as Francisco Bacalhau has slipped into the top 10. Him and Chuck Stevens going at it for the transfer spot off turn 2. That's an important spot. Final one gets into the All-Star main for the 15 laps that follow. Bacalhau scrapes in at turn 3. He's in the wall. Ray Rogers back to the inside. 2 laps to go this time by. Can Porter catch the race leader? So far, he's been able to match. He has not been able to best. That time by 4 1/1000ths of a second faster, but that is not going to cut it. They're spinning off of turn 2. Bacalhau, Hall, Stevens, all of them involved. And we are not going to get a yellow flag. That was all in the battle for the transfer. Final lap in segment 2. Drama unfolding here in the Queen City. And it's Ray Rogers who's going to have the transfer spot for now. Yellow flag is out. And will that do it for the segment? Ray Rogers considered the last driver in as of timing and scoring. And after a bunch of heart-pumping laps, Bacalhau, Hall, and Stevens all in trouble on the back straightaway. What happened here between the 3 cars? And this was entering turns 1 and 2. We saw Bacalhau hit the wall. Oh, and Stevens just got into him. Stevens runs high, smacks the quarter panel of Bacalhau. Nowhere for Zachary Hall to go. And the 3 go chasing to the inside of the racetrack. Stevens with a spill. Bacalhau goes around for good on the back straightaway. And his attempt to just rally back to the field squandered. There's the contact from Stevens. And Bacalhau just holding on for dear life. Hard hit for Zachary Hall as well. Nowhere to go in that instance. And here's the onboard look. So Hall maintains the bottom. You'll see those cars get together, but again, they're chasing down the banking. He's hoping he can squeeze by, but just gets hip checked by the falling Stevens and just noses right into the inside wall. Zachary Hall, the series champion from season 1, will not get to share the group. Now take the green flag for the final 15. And instead, Ray Rogers will be moving on as the final driver in to this 10-driver showdown with 15 laps to go. This could be the final pit stop tonight. Is it 2 or 4? We've seen those 2 tire calls give track position. It hasn't necessarily squared out to be a deficiency. And all of the top 3 decide they want 2 tires. It's Porter and Banks right to the line, and Brandon Banks will win the race off pit road. So as we eliminate the rest of the drivers, 11th on back, we'll run through the top 10 here on the KBueno Racing Network before we kick off the final segment of our 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series All-Star Race. It is Brandon Banks, the South Carolina driver, at the front of the field. So far, the points leader has won a race or two throughout his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series tenure, and a winner at Daytona to kick off the season this year. Jaden Porter on the outside of row number 1 in second. He's won so far a couple times as well in his Droppin the Hammah career, and 1 time this season. Matthew Perosini and Warren Kyle Keith will share row number 2, 3rd, and 4th. Stephen Harlow back in the top 7. Rather in the P5 spot. Justin Erb going to be P6. Justin Erb back in 7th place. Ray Rogers, Kevin Roy, and Alex Muscarello will bring in the top 10 that remain in this all-star race. Everyone else fundamentally eliminated from contention, and we'll just roll on through the final 15. Again, caution laps are still going to matter in the sense that we could still have crashes for the rest of the night. However, those laps, just like we've seen all night long, will not count for the overall distance of the race, so we will not extend it to an overtime restart. We would just have any amount of a lap dash given the circumstances of tonight's race. And one last look at the rules for segment 3. We cut it down to 10 drivers. Those 10 scrap it for 15 quick laps around Charlotte Motor Speedway, and that will do it. $25 on the line. Brandon Banks is in control of the field. Him and Jaden Porter with a battle of the Titans in segment number 1. Will they complete the same challenge? Will they do it all over again? Who's to say? 15 laps to decide the All-Star race from Charlotte. Banks out ahead first. Jaden Porter follows in his tracks. Perosini and Keith battle for 3rd off turn 2. And here comes Porter. Look on the bottom shelf. Nearly contact for the lead. Porter runs through the paint. Runs through the transition. Banks has the run. And they'll be dead heat again. Back to turn 1. It has been a showdown between these two all night long. And there it is. Jaden Porter to the front from Charlotte with 14 to go. What a drive. What a move. And it's Warren Kyle Keith up next in the challenge for 2nd. Rogers moving up to 7th. Brandon Banks under fire. Keith to the bottom. On board with the 24 car. Imagine just how difficult it's been to make moves on the bottom of the racetrack all night long. Porter made it happen, then some. Keith drifts away. Banks pulls away. And the battle for the lead settled by 0.3 of a second with 12 laps to go. Here comes Justin Erb on Perosini, battle for 5th. And Perosini, what a drive it's been for him tonight. Very sneakily fast. Pretty quiet run for the driver of the 96, but so far the rookie driver has been the highest running amongst those in this status for most of the night. And has been really on fire so far. Will not gain the $25 if he's not that first man to the line. But again, we mentioned next week a points-paying effort here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Perosini has been strong many times on these mile-and-a-half tracks. Could next Sunday be a breakout moment for the driver of the 96? You'll just have to wait for next week. And even with the elevated power, lots of experience to gain on this worn-out mile-and-a-half surface. Here's the battle for 7th place. Rogers and Alex Muscarello, the neon yellow Ryobi car. And Alex Muscarello's Red Bull Chevrolet holds back on the fire to turn 1. And the battles inside the back half of the top 10 continue to run wild. We'll see if any of them get into any incidents. Of course, cautions can influence the end of this race, even though the caution laps do not count. We have seen so many times where the drivers have worn out their tires very early on in the run. And could the same be said for Jaden Porter? We saw how Brandon Banks gave up the pole sitting position, fell back to 4th in the first run. All it took him was about 25 laps and just some lines to work with. And Banks was able to gain all the speed back, relinquish control at the front, and then regain control at the end. Can he do the same phenomenon in this final stint? Crossing the line, 8 laps to go. Still a long way to the start-finish line, and the checkered flag, caution flag waves, trouble in the back. Jesse Whittington, Perosini. Here's there was trouble with Ray Rogers, a huge crash for Rogers. And he'll be out of this race. He was fighting for top 10, remember, back in the running. Get a second look in the battle with Alex Muscarello, the 2 teammates going at it. Muscarello cuts in front, Kevin Roy behind. I don't know if Rogers got a hit from anyone else, whether there was assistance or whether there was, there was assistance at the front. Justin Erb, a hard hit. Oh my, going up and over into the outside wall. Justin Erb with a huge hit. And the drivers behind just nowhere to hide and nowhere to get out of the mess. Erb got a tap, checked up middle of the apex. It's hard to maintain that speed without the car wearing down the right front tire. Rogers with nowhere to go. And a substantial hit. Justin Erb on a strong run tonight. Those 2 drivers out of the All-Star race. Here's another look. Just lifting up in the sky. And Rogers with all that damage, nowhere he could go to escape. And everyone else will either take their chance on pit road or stay out. And the top 5 have elected this is their moment to stay out on the racetrack. Jesse Whittington and 6 on back. They have decided to come in for some fresh Goodyear Eagles. Jesse Whittington on a 2-tire call. Everyone else with 4. And that also includes Warren Kyle Keith, 4 fresh tires on a 14.4 second stop. And Keith, we saw him earlier in the top 3, running right behind Brandon Banks. He feels a tire change could be the game time decision to be able to weave his way into the win. Again, caution laps do not count, so we are currently still stuck at 8 laps to go. And that will add on to the potential time that all of those drivers that just came down pit road can work with. And that's a big advantage that they have versus when caution laps do count on a regular basis. You can come down pit road late in the affair, and for a moment you could have the tire advantage. It could work out in your favor, but if you have 5 or less laps to do so, it could be much harder to be able to cut your way through the group and be able to get into the race lead with enough time to comfortably stay there. But since these caution laps do not count, possibility for Whittington, Warren Kyle Keith, Alex Muscarello, all of those drivers who just came down the pit lane, possibility for them to have more time to work with. More time to work with on fresh tires usually means they can use the most of their Goodyear Eagles for what it's worth. And they'll settle back out in the back end of this top 10. It's Jaden Porter, the race leader. Brandon Banks on the outside to react in row number 1. Matthew Perosini strong all night long. Will be on the inside of row 2 in 3rd. Stephen Harlow on a comeback drive in 4th. And then, of course, starts the drivers who just came down the pit lane. Jesse Whittington on a 2-tire call in 5th. 4 fresh tires for Warren Kyle Keith, Alex Muscarello, Kevin Roy back in 8th place. Justin Erb and Ray Rogers, no question on whether we will not see them again tonight, as they are heavily damaged in their cars. They will stay down the pit road for the repairs, but most likely their shot at the All-Star win is all said and done. So let's do this again. It's been an all-time battle between Banks and Porter. Call this an all-star race all you want. Call this a non-serious race. But these drivers have been doing all that they can in a very serious matter for the $25, and they have 8 laps to complete the task. Porter's in control of the next restart. There's the line. There's the zone. Porter's out and away. Green flag. 8 laps to go. And now with a lesser car count, will that help Whittington and Warren Kyle Keith move through? They're back in 5th and 6th. No real gains off of turn number 2. Banks holds back in 2nd. And Stephen Harlow looks for his attack on the runner-up spot. Jaden Porter can see it behind him. And Jaden Porter will see 7 laps to go from Charlotte. Is there any time? Is there any wiggle room? And is Porter able to solidify the All-Star win? There's the onboard look. Jesse Whittington, that blue car on the high side, trying to gain any ground. Warren Kyle Keith cannot. And those two mired back in traffic through the top 5. 6 laps remaining from Charlotte Motor Speedway. And still the gap for the lead at around 0.2 of a second back to turn 1. Oh, sideways off turn 2. Big save from Roy. Will stay green. Chance for the fresh tire cars may be done. Perusini on the bottom of Whittington for 4th. And they've let Banks go away in his charge from 2nd. Still looking at a shot at the race leader inside. 5 laps to go. What a night it has been from Concord. Banks with a large send in 3, trying to hook the car through the apex in 3 and 4, and still cannot get around the Allied Chevrolet, gaining a bit of ground and then losing it. Give and take. Off of turn 4, they have pulled away from everyone 3rd on back. And it's Jaden Porter in control, coming down to the final few miles here from Charlotte Motor Speedway to get an all-star dub for the KBueno Racing team. Stephen Harlow stepped up into 3rd. Now battle with Jesse Whittington, now with Matthew Perusini. And those two going at it for position inside the top 5. But it's 3 laps to go. And just now 4.5 miles that separate this Allied Chevrolet from $25 and an all-star victory. Can he stay up there? Banks, another large dive. Lunging in 3. Losing ground off turn 4. And Jaden Porter can see it now. 2 laps to go. Banks has given him a run for the money literally over the course of the night. But now he's falling in the pit. And the 82 car, who dominated Las Vegas Motor Speedway earlier this season, curls around turn 4. And the Louisville, Kentucky native, Jaden Porter, sees the white flag. 1 more to go in the All-Star race. It's been a drive to remember. Joining us for the All-Star Open, running through the All-Star race, battling with Brandon Banks time and time again, and he will outlast the competition and will be $25 richer. Jaden Porter wins the 2026 All-Star race. See the field congratulating, and a very special congratulatory moment from Brandon Banks. The hard race they put on all night long. And it's Jaden Porter with his first career All-Star race win. And does it here from Charlotte Motor Speedway. And will enter Droppin the Hammah victory lane for the second time this season. This time with a bit of cash in his pocket. Outstanding performance from Porter. Kept it clean. Ran hard all race through. And on multiple 2-tire, 4-tire calls. The first driver up at the green flag restart and gets it done in the All-Star race, hanging on to the win over Brandon Banks and Stephen Harlow, who close out the rest of the top 3 at the end of tonight's proceeding. So Jaden Porter takes the All-Star win, $25 richer, and the one-time winner this season will enjoy an All-Star win for the first time in his DTH Cup Series career. Brandon Banks had to give him credit for the run he performed tonight, battling Jaden Porter through lap after lap, and gave it his all in a clean effort. Brandon Banks, runner-up in the All-Star race. Stephen Harlow on a comeback drive. Only driver to qualify from the Open to get a top 3, and out of 2 drivers that qualified in from the KBRN Open Challenge to end up in the top 5 at the end of this main race. Jesse Whittington in 4th. Matthew Parasini, top 3 in the first stage of the Open race earlier on this evening. And he closes tonight with a top 5. Warren Kyle Keith on 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. Couldn't gain enough ground for the top 5, but ends up in position number 6 with Alex Muscarella, the DTH Chevrolet, back in 7th. Kevin Roy going to be the last driver on the lead lap in 8th. Ray Rogers and Justin Erb suffering a hard crash at the end of the run in the 15-lap final segment. They end up as the final drivers qualified in the top 10. 11th will go to Francisco Bacalhau, him, Charles Stevens, and Zachary Hall. A trio of cars that crashed near the end of the second segment did not qualify. Neither did Garrett Walden, Richard Swavely, Cedric Hunter, and Brad Fulham, last of the group that make it through in this All-Star main, right behind the number 28, or the 82 now, of Jaden Porter. So let's join the race winner in Droppin the Hammah victory lane for the second time this season, but it's the first and only time you've done it in an all-star capacity. Jaden, you are $25 richer. What a drive, a gauntlet you had to deal with here tonight from Charlotte. What does it feel like to win the all-star race?
It feels great, man. I wasn't as excited coming into this race because it's hard to get warmed up or hyped up for a non-points race, I guess, for whatever reason. But after that first 50-lap stint, I don't remember being this hungry for a win in a bit. I really wanted to win this race. Whatever reason, after those first 50 laps, it just lit a fire underneath me. And it was a crazy race for clean air. That move I did on Banks out of turn 2, I basically just said he's either gonna lift or we're both gonna wreck, or he'll lift and I get the lead. And luckily he lifted. I kind of gave him no choice. I hate racing like that, but money's on the line. I wanted to take home the $25, and it was a very chaotic last 8 laps there, because I left auto fuel on and I didn't realize I was short on fuel until down the backstretch with 1 to green there. So I was saving fuel the whole time. That whole last run, the last 7 laps, I was still saving fuel but maintaining the lead, which was something I didn't think I was going to be able to do. So very chaotic last 8 laps for me, to say the least, but very excited to take home the money and win the All-Star race.
Well, we didn't know that storyline, so that just adds a lot more stress to the plate in that final run. Let's transfer back in time, though. Segments 1 and 2, the drives that you had against Brandon Banks, probably some of the best racing we've seen here over the last few months on the KBueno Racing Network, back and forth, side by side for the lead. What are you thinking in those moments when each and every lap you guys are matching the lap time, matching the performance, and it's the same result, just maybe a car or two in front, maybe an inch or two in front at the start-finish line. What is that all like in that moment when you're battling side by side?
Yeah, that first run, I guess I didn't calibrate my pedals or whatnot, so my brake pedal, like, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right the whole race, even after I calibrated it, but it just didn't feel right the first run, and I really burnt off my right front when that happened. So I wasn't as good maybe the first 50 laps I wanted to, but I still saw that I had the speed. I just needed to fix or adjust whatever my brake pedal was doing. And I feel like I was able to do that really well. But that racing with Banks was pretty fun. I know it was putting on a show for the broadcast, so it's always fun to race side by side like that. And it not be like anything to get mad over or people taking it the wrong way. It's just hard racing for the lead. And Banks is always a guy you can always trust racing around. So I always trust being around him. So credits to him for racing clean there, and just happy we were able to get the win tonight.
Outlasting there in those final few laps, and you take the All-Star win. I know potentially it's a different package from what we will run next week, but you and Banks still head-to-head in the battle for the championship lead moving through the regular season. So is there anything you may take momentum-wise or racing-wise from tonight's race at Charlotte that could help in next week's affair when we're at this very same racetrack?
I mean, I like the horsepower change. I think I would think that's going to be the move. I don't see why you wouldn't just race with more horsepower. Who doesn't like more horsepower? But I feel like this might be the package we run next week. I would love for iRacing to add to where you can take the weight out of the car and take all the weight out of the race car. I feel like that would make the car more loose and a lot more fun to drive, in my opinion. But I enjoyed more horsepower. I mean, as a race car driver, who doesn't want more horsepower? And me and Banks 1-2. It's how it's kind of been all season. Unfortunately, I think I might miss a few races throughout this regular season, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay in the championship battle, regular season fight or not. But maybe I'll make the races. You never know. But it's always fun to race against Banks. Like I said, he's a respectable competitor, and appreciate him racing me clean, and just really excited to get the win. Haven't ever won a money race on iRacing, so it's one accomplishment, I guess, off the list now.
All right, so that leads me to my final question before we let you give the shout-outs to who makes it all possible. What are you going to do with the $25? Anything you're investing in? Anything you're going to purchase? What's the decision there with the cash prize?
Man, I'm probably going to waste it on DoorDash, knowing me. I always be buying DoorDash, even after work sometimes, especially the day I get paid. I just get me DoorDash for no reason. When I have food just in the fridge, I just am lazy and want DoorDash. So I'll probably spend on DoorDash, probably. I might spend it tonight, who knows, but that's probably what we'll go to.
All right, not a bad decision. A little bit of a late night snack here after a huge win. Lots of rewards after tonight's All-Star race. Maybe you'll leave an extra tip for the Dasher as well after the All-Star win. Jaden, before we let you go in all seriousness, who do you want to thank? Who do you want to shout out for tonight's run?
Yeah, I think I want to KBueno Racing. Francisco, he's racing tonight. It's always fun to be teammates with him again. He really helped coach me through saving fuel there, as I was kind of freaking out about it a little bit. So thanks to him. Thanks to my brother and his friends for watching. Thanks to you guys for doing the broadcast and letting me in the booth. It's always an honor to be in the booth with you, Kenneth. So appreciate you guys letting me do that. Shout out to Bree like always. Thanks to Ally. They're the best sponsor. They need to sponsor me. They should. I feel like people should start shouting out to where they sponsor me. Ally, if you hear this, you should sponsor me. I win races. So, we'll go on from there and go on to Charlotte next week.
Well, Jaden, we appreciate the time. Always great to share the booth with you and, of course, share this interview with you in Droppin' the Hammah Victory Lane. Congratulations on the All-Star victory. We'll see you in the field next week right here. Same track, Charlotte Motor Speedway, for some points.
All right, thank you, buddy.
Jaden Porter, $25 richer, and some DoorDash potentially along the way to his house in Kentucky. Jaden Porter, the winner of the 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series All-Star race. We're now joined by the second-place finisher in Brandon Banks. You know the saying, it takes two to tango, an orchestrated dance between yourself and Jaden Porter through most of this race in a fast car. And we know you can save tires better than a lot of drivers in the sim and as good as anyone. So what did you feel there in that final run trying to chase Porter for the win?
I think I needed a couple more laps, honestly, or I didn't need that caution right there in the middle of the last segment there. The heat cycle just messed me up. I couldn't really get any run on it, but at that time you're just air blocking at that point, and you try to run those alternate lines. This package is better here. I know when we raced 4 wide, I know we didn't have as much fuel in the car, so it was even more tighter. But this package with the extra horsepower, I think helped a little bit with the passing. It helped the tires wear a little bit more, and actually helped give a little bit more separation to the people. You could run different styles. If you wanted to kind of run out, or if you wanted to, kind of save a little bit, it kind of lended it to both ways. So. Yeah, I think we just needed a couple more laps. I think overall, the long run, we were probably one of the best cars, if not the best car. Definitely be ready for next week. I really wanted to learn a lot, tonight to really kind of take it into next week and try to continue leading the points and stuff. It's got some tracks coming up that we should be decent at. And there's a couple that we're definitely not decent at. So we need to kind of get a little more padding there if we can run good. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Congrats to Jayden. He ran a good race, man. He always races me clean. I mean, it is what it is. It's really just it's a shootout there at the end, and you do what you want to do. I'm not going to wreck him for the win or anything like that. So, we'll take our lumps and take what we learned and go next week.
So let's go back briefly to the topic of the package. Lots of testing done with this brand new higher horsepower package, 737 versus 670. What did you take away from the driving experience and practice in the race, and fundamentally how much more different it is from the usual package we've been running all season?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it tends to make the car a little looser later in the run, depending on how hard you run the car. It does help with the passing. This car tends to already bog down a lot in the dirty air. So, having that little extra horsepower to get up off the corner, if you can, you still drive in the dirty air, it's really bad. But, if you can get your nose clean, and actually drive, not in their wake, you actually can get enough run to where you feel like you can make a pass. So, definitely, I haven't been way back in the pack. Fortunately, I was up front for the most of the part of this race, so I didn't get a ton of dirty air except for just with the couple guys that were in front of me. I'm sure it's even worse in the back, obviously, but definitely I think it's going to be better. I think we're going to have a lot better race. Hopefully we can run this package next week. I'm not 100% sure if he's definitely decided we're going to do that or not, but I hope they do. Be something different. And I think it'll lend itself to a better race overall. So we'll see what they say. And we'll, like I said, we'll go from there.
So moving on, we're back here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Whether we have a different package there or not, still left to be determined. But same track, you've had some laps on it now here in this All-Star race. Top 10 in every single event so far this season for the points. So what's the mindset going into the later half of this regular season where the gauntlet through the summer begins and we've got some great tracks coming up?
Just keep doing what we're doing. Just trying to run clean races. Just put together, top 5s, top 3s if we can. Like I said, we got some good drivers in here. It's really tough to race up here and do that every week. And then we got Zach back again. I mean, that's great that he's back in there. Give us some more guys to race with. But yeah, I mean, we're just gonna go into each race and just kind of do what we've been doing. I think we got some decent tracks coming up. I think with Charlotte and Kansas, Michigan. Those are good ones for us. And then, we have a couple that we're not so good at, with Sonoma and stuff like that. So, we're just going to get the points on the races that hopefully we can, be good at and, just try to, finish as well as we can in those others. And just hopefully at the end, we're still in contention as far as the points go and, be able to, actually be in the playoffs to, make a run at it.
Well, Brandon, a great run tonight in the All-Star race from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Before we let you go, before we continue the rest of this regular season, anybody that you want to give a shout out to or thank for tonight?
Oh man, thanks to you as always, man. Awesome broadcast. A lot of fun to listen to. I'm gonna go back and watch it. And I know that first stage with me and Jayden racing door to door, that was a lot of fun. congrats to him. He deserved it. He was, one of the top 3 cars, I think, all night. And he put himself out front, made the moves he needed to make. So congrats to him. Thanks to Droppin the Hammah for sponsoring it. Steven, everybody, Kunkel, all those guys, the admin, Alex, that helped put the stuff on, man. Appreciate them. DBR, of course. Kip couldn't make it tonight. He had some prior commitments. So hopefully he'll be back next week and get my teammate in there, somebody to talk to while I'm in there. It gets a little lonely in there by yourself. But yeah, like I said, thanks to everybody that come out and watched and everything. It was a lot of fun. This format was, I think Jaden was a little skeptical about it as well. This format, this was kind of fun, man. They gave us all the right amount of tires and everything so we could actually have fun, and it was a ton of different strategies. It was really cool. So, like I said, we'll look forward to next week. Hopefully we can run this package, and I think, I don't know. We'll see. I think we got something for them next week. We'll see.
Fun across the board. It was fun watching it here in the broadcast booth, and great to see you a part of the top 3 at the end. Brandon, congratulations on the 2nd place finish here in the All-Star race. Can't wait to see what you and the field cook up here at Charlotte next week for Points Racing.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Brandon Banks on a hard-fought effort, 2nd place at the end of it all here from this 1.5 mile in Concord, North Carolina. And we move on, but we don't really move anywhere. We stay here in the Queen City. Charlotte Motor Speedway hosting the next round of the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series next Sunday on April 26th. You can find our coverage at 8:30 p.m. Eastern right here on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel. We continue on through the regular campaign at Kansas, Talladega, Michigan, Pocono, and the stretch through the summer begins. Everyone eyeing down on Chicagoland Speedway, the first race of the newly formed Droppin the Hammah Cup Series Chase for the Cup in the run-up to the championship, which comes right back here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. So we'll be seeing a lot of this track in the next few months, including next week. Be sure to tune in with us tomorrow night as we continue the season of the KBRN Truck Series, and we also get to set the journey to crown a Season 2 KBRN Truck Series champion as the chase for the Cup begins at the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway in its old 2008 configuration. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, April 20th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on the KBueno Racing Network, and so much more action-packed sim racing for you throughout the week. Wednesday, we are entering our semi-final race of this 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series season. That is Season 8. That is continuing. We'll cut down the drivers from 10 to 5 that move on to the championship finale. The following Wednesday, we'll be racing from Homestead Miami Speedway. Be sure to join us at 8:35 p.m. Eastern for coverage of the Thousand Islands Correct pre-race show before our race coverage begins at 9:10 p.m. Eastern. Also, be sure to tune in with us on the following day, the 23rd of April of 2026. The SAC Cup Series goes back in action. Their mid-season Madness Challenge continues, and their season reaching an all-time peak with the point standings entering the Eliminator Chase. Regular season right here from Charlotte Motor Speedway. You'll catch that action at 8:30 p.m. Eastern as well, right here on the KBueno Racing Network before we return with action of the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series from Charlotte Motor Speedway. So that'll do it from all of us at the KBueno Racing Network covering this 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series All-Star Race, and we thank you so much for joining us. For everyone at the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, for Steven Stempy and Chris Progar and the entire wonderful admin team, and for everyone at the KBueno Racing Network, for Nate Polite, Eli Comerford, Charlie Beyer, Keelan Belsha, Mikey Neal, Francisco Bacalao, and everyone else, I'm Kenneth Bueno saying so long from Charlotte, where the All-Star Race winner is Jaden Porter, taking home $25 as the series enters the regular season once again next weekend here at Charlotte. We'll see you then.